And he's come to that judgment, I think, particularly after speaking to cabinet colleagues, but also weighing, I think, the size of Andy Burnham's win, which was significant and tremendous.
And Nick, just a few hours later, the news, Andy Burnham, the former Manchester mayor, new MP for Makerfield, would stand to replace the Prime Minister, but Wes Streeting, the former Health Secretary, would not. The new Makerfield MP returned to Westminster in a flurry of activity. You're not the Messiah, some called, as he was sworn in as an MP in the House of Commons.
To Andy Burnham, member for Makerfield.
I swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
And he quick backed, "You're a very naughty boy." So clearly he'd been remembering his Monty Python references.
Should have said he's a northern boy. That would have
been very funny.
Yeah, you're not the Messiah, but I'm a northern boy.
Very good. Yeah, I like that one. We'll post that to Team Burnham to see what we can
take the sun out of the boy, or whatever.
Indeed.
Yeah.
He then was posing for selfies and signing autographs, Nick, in Westminster Hall with other friends and colleagues. He raised his hands up, grinning as he entered to embrace them all. It felt, Nick, like a real moment. The momentum certainly is with Andy Burnham in the Labour Party. All the talk now is what happens next. The Prime Minister wants to tie up a few loose ends. The Defence Investment Plan, I'm told, Nick, is coming next week. And he also wants to try and make progress on the stalled Hillsborough law. And what for the Labour Party will anyone run against Andy Burnham? The only two rumoured so far to be weighing things up are Al Carnes, who, of course, you spoke with 2 weeks ago. He didn't rule it out when you spoke with him. And Darren Jones, the Prime Minister's Chief Secretary. Now, it will be tough for them to get the 80 MPs needed, but many want a contest and not a coronation. And, Nick, every sign points to us getting just that for Andy Burnham.
LBC's political editor Natasha Clark reporting so it's less than a week ago that the good folk of Makerfield turned out of that by-election and elected a man who would seem to be, as Natasha was saying, on course to be the Prime Minister. So what do the Makerfield voters make of that? Let's go to Chris Chambers, LBC's North West correspondent, who has returned again to Makerfield, an area I would imagine he now knows quite well. Morning, Chamber, what you got?
Morning, Nick. Yeah, this place was the centre of the political world for more than a month, wasn't it? Political parties campaigning, news crews up and down the streets, asking people who they were going to be voting for. But now the focus has shifted to Westminster, as we saw yesterday, and there is this now intense focus on Andy Burnham, the person, rather than Makerfield, the place. And that was something people were concerned about should he win this seat. It's only been 5 days, and from the people we've been speaking to here, there is a mixed feeling about whether he has their best interests at heart.
Made a mockery of Ashton and politics between them. Josh Simmons and Andy Burnham, they just made a mockery of Ashton, I think.
I don't think we'll see him round here again, will we?
It was an easy seat for him, in my opinion.
I think Andy is one of the most hardest working, genuine MPs we have now.
Is he going to win the votes of the south of England for the next election?
Immigration is a major, illegal immigrants.
It was terrible, absolutely terrible. I can't even think of one thing that he's done positive that has affected me and my family.
Well, Andy Burnham used the slogan, "Vote Andy for Us," and during the by-election campaign, the us part of that meant the people who live here in Makerfield. But there is every possibility that us will soon extend out to the whole country. There are issues here, though, that people want sorting, things like the illegal toxic waste dump just a couple of miles from here, which is a massive local issue that may now slip down his list of priorities. The other big issue here is Andy Burnham's old gig as Manchester Metro Mayor. Because of his experience and his profile, he has been able to achieve a lot during his time. But will whoever comes next, Nick, be able to wield that same power?
Chris Chambers reporting from Makerfield, 12 after 7. Let's get some expert opinion on what has gone wrong for Sir Keir Starmer. That's what I'm asking you. Remember we talked about last week when we sort of saw which way the wind is blowing. Now we know completely which way the gale has blown. I remind you, fewer than two, but about 23 months ago, the Prime Minister promised to heal the wounds, heal this lack of trust. He would put country first, party second, and he would unite the country. He would bring stability and moderation. His words, not mine. But as Daniel now Lord Finkelstein, a Conservative peer and columnist for The Times, writes in The Times today, and this is his concluding paragraphs, once upon a time there was an intelligent, highly conscientious, congenial man who proved entirely unsuited to the office he sought. As a result, he ended up being hated and laughed at by voters in a way that he did not deserve, but could not withstand. Full stop. The end, full stop. Expand on that if you would, Daniel. Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, I thought there were two problems that Keir Starmer came into on day one. The first is that he had not won the victory that everyone thought he'd won. He'd only got 33% of the vote, despite the fact that he had a landslide. And the second is that he didn't have a plan to deal with the problems that he was then going to face. He didn't really know how he was going to deal, for example, with the fiscal dilemma, with the financial dilemma, what he was going to do about tax and spending. So from the beginning, he ended up making decisions that people hadn't expected, for example, on the winter fuel allowance, and which his base did not support. And the moment he lost a bit of his base, he was then going down from 33%, not a very great number, into the 20s before he even got going. So if you look at his approval ratings compared to lots of prime ministers when they enter office, he was already quite considerably below the waterline, even at the beginning. So this was always going to be difficult. It needed somebody who was an extremely deft politician, someone with creative imagination, and he did not have that. In other words, over a long period of history, we have these periods of intense change where we have lots of prime ministers in a row, and somebody needs to come along to reshape the politics of the country around some sort of imaginative idea, and he was never going to be that person. That's what's gone wrong.
You put it so eloquently, Danny. I said yesterday after the resignation, unfortunately, we had a process-driven lawyer and we needed a thump-thumping politician, and he ain't that.
Yes, I mean, it's interesting that the sort of abilities of people to be politicians have suddenly become fashionable because, of course, everyone talks about, and Keir Starmer rather shared that, right? He shared the view that we were too political, that someone like Boris Johnson, for example, has spent all his time talking, Keir Starmer was going to get on doing, but actually you do need an ability to lead people and to explain to them what you're doing. And Keir Starmer, it wasn't just that he couldn't do that. Very oddly, in some ways creditably actually, he didn't believe in that because he thought it was just sort of flim-flam. Yes. And he was going to get into Downing Street, close the door, read all the papers and make decisions. An interesting little problem with that is he actually wasn't that very good at the last bit of that either. And I think that was critical. He didn't even offer that. And I think had he been able to offer that, had he been able to say, look, I am a great administrator, I am a great decision maker, I may not be the greatest talker, then people might have looked at it differently, but I think they felt he didn't make good decisions, and the Mandelson decision stood in for all those others. It wasn't so much it itself, but what it said about his decision-making and choices.
Danny, you're a man who loves his football. I can't think of any football club that continued by going through 7 managers, as it were, or head coaches, through 10 years. We all know what happens to those teams. Do you sense now a period of longevity for Andy Burnham? How excited or otherwise are you, if that is what, and it will happen, that is what transpires?
I don't think he's quite like Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer didn't really know what he wanted to do. I think Andy Burnham does. The problem Andy Burnham has is he doesn't quite know how he's going to do it, which is a slight problem. He's got big choices to make, and actually I think he might make big, consequential, controversial choices. So I rather feel as though this may be a bigger change than people are at the moment anticipating. I think they're moving from one kind of soft left leader to another. It won't make a big difference. I think it might, but Andy Burnham's got that choice to make now, whether he's going to actually see through his really quite radical language that he uses it, for example, in his recent book that he did with the mayor of Liverpool, Head North. Right. It's quite bracing, a written constitution, an equality, an idea of equality between different regions of the country. By the way, for Londoners, pretty interesting. He's sort of talking quite a lot about moving power out and wealth out of London. So big consequential things, and he might see it through. If he doesn't see it through, it's just going to be another period like the one we've just been through. All right, I must leave it there. Danny, thank you. Lord Finkelstein, Conservative economist for the Times. He has a piece in today's newspaper. So, a decent man, just totally unsuited for the job, is basically summing up what Danny is saying. How shall you remember him? Let's get to the LBC News headlines. It's already 7:17. LBC Newsroom, Dominic Ellis.
It's understood 2 senior Labour MPs are being urged to run against Andy Burnham for the Labour leadership. The former chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, is expected to be sentenced later for embezzlement. And the UK's record for the highest temperature in June could be broken later today. LBC weather, sunny and hot in the south, with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east. Cloudy in the north, but mostly dry. a high of 37 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Severe delays on the M25 on the Essex stretch, anti-clockwise at junction 26 at Waltham Abbey. It's slow from the M11 after an accident. Traffic still being held on the M20 eastbound at junction 11A at the Channel Tunnel after an accident. And there are problems in East London now at Chaswell Heath. The A12's just been closed northbound at Whalebone Lane North because of an ongoing investigation. Lots of roads are closed because of flooding in Twickenham. Heath roads had to be closed both ways under the railway bridge. Also because of flooding, the trains are badly affected. For example, there's a reduced Heathrow Express service and South Western Railway are severely disrupted to and from Barnes. And still no trains running between Luton and Bedford. The investigation works continue.
This is LBC.
A home on our holiday park will help you relax.
Owning a holiday home will be stressful and upsetting.
It'll make money for you.
There are endless hidden costs.
Oh, yeah, we'll buy it back whenever.
We'll pay you a fraction of what it's worth. There are two sides to every story. If you bought a home on a holiday park, contact Holiday Park Advice Centre. Because if you were missold, we can help. Text a
They had 5 prime ministers in a very short period, and he said he was going to end that chaos. He was going to grow the economy, wasn't he? And he hasn't really delivered. We was prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt to start off with, but very quickly, as he made loads of mistakes, the winter fuel allowance, employers' national insurance contributions, and his major mistake of getting so close to Donald Trump, we were the most critical of him. So he's a decent man, I think. But, he didn't deliver. He just didn't deliver.
You watched, and indeed I saw you challenge him regularly in the House of Commons. Were you and your colleagues surprised by the speed at which the Starmer administration seemed to fall apart?
Yeah, totally. I mean, take you back to that moment when Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer were arguing to get rid of the winter fuel allowance, and then very quickly their first budget, which was a total disaster for growth, for business, for jobs and for people. And there was just mistake after mistake. And I really didn't expect that. Poor judgment. And I think he didn't really recognise what Trump was about. Before Trump inauguration, it was quite clear that he was going to damage our country with trade tariffs and create a trade war. And so I called for a new relationship with Europe, over a customs union. I thought it was a positive development, give us a stronger hand to deal with Donald Trump, and he didn't take that idea forward. And, I think, people are getting a bit fed up of this merry-go-round of prime ministers, aren't they? We saw it under the Tories. Now Labour, that's 7 prime ministers we'll have had in a decade. That's not good for the country. It's why nothing ever works, I think, if you don't have that stability. Wow. And I think it shows that our political system is broken, quite frankly, Nick.
So, Ed, you say it's a country that doesn't work. I'd just take you back to his speech less than 24 hours ago. And is this the Britain you recognise? An economy that is stronger, growing faster than our peers, wages rising faster than inflation, an infrastructure being built, and an end to austerity. Is that the UK you recognise?
No. I like to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's done some good things, right? Let's have some balance in this conversation. I think the free school meals, which he nicked from us, really going hard on things like solar power. There are a number of things he did well. He was right, by the way, on not backing Trump on the idiotic war in Iran, where the Tories and Reform wanted that war. I think the Prime Minister's right to keep us out of that damaging war. So it's not a completely negative thing, but on the big stuff, on getting our economy going, on sorting out relationship with Europe, on sorting out social care to back the NHS. You and I have talked about that a lot. It's an issue dear to my heart. It's just failed, and that's been really disappointing.
Can I ask you, I know you've already given your views on this, How significant is it that this would appear, this transfer of power would be without a general election, Sir Ed?
Well, it's happened quite a few times before, so I don't think anyone would be surprised at it. Listen, I think people want to give whoever the new Prime Minister, presumably Andy Burnham, give them a chance, but they'll be very impatient. I think the window for any new Prime Minister is a very, very short one. And if they don't grasp the scale of the change we need, publish a defence investment plan which is going to secure our country, get our growth strategy, I think a closer trading relationship with Europe to sort out the mess of the decade post-Brexit, I think people will want a general election if he's not up for the change, the real change that we need.
You mentioned Brexit. Let's quickly come to that if we can, Sir Ed. What did that do to the British voting psyche or electoral psyche in that, as you've rightly observed, since Brexit, we'll have gone through 6 or we'll have our 7th Prime Minister?
Yeah, I mean, I think people initially wanted to give it a chance, even if they didn't vote for it. But they've had a decade now. And, when I talk to people, even people who voted for it, they're just saying, look, can we move on now? Can we think of something different? Because this clearly hasn't worked. The Brexit experiment of the Conservatives has failed. The only one who's benefited from it, as far as I can see, is Nigel Farage with his £5 million reward, which you now won't answer any questions about. The truth is, the British taxpayers lost £90 billion a year. Our growth has been weak. Our public finances are a mess. The cost of living has gone up. People are realising it, right? And so, yes, we need to fix our politics, I've argued, but we do need to fix our trading relationship with Europe. And we've come up with an idea which I think is quite new. We're talking about a new growth and defence partnership, a growth and defence partnership with Europe, which we've never had before. I think it would mean you could get that growth through the single market, through the customs union, the things that we are used to. But because we'd have that defence relationship with Europe, is desperate, by the way, for us to be part of a new defence relationship. I think we'd have a really strong hand to play, and I think it's important for the protection of our country.
Briefly, what would that mean for NATO, though? I appreciate the United States is not within the European Union, but what would that mean for NATO if we had a defence partnership?
No, it would strengthen NATO. I mean,
why do we need it if we've already got NATO? This is NATO light, isn't it?
No. NATO stays under my plans.
So we have another one?
No. Let me talk you through it, because it's
another collection of colonels and generals and God knows what else.
No. Let me take you.
Come along, Ed.
Let me take you through it. First of all, it's about getting the investment we need. So we've argued for a European.
No, but on the military side. What am I serving for NATO, or am I serving for the European Defence Initiative?
No. This would support NATO, right? So a European rearmament bank to get the money in our defence industries. Remember, after the Iron Curtain came down, we had the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. Really important. We now need a European rearmament bank. Secondly, we need a European Security Council. I mean, Europe doesn't act quick enough on defence issues altogether. A European Security Council, a bit like you have at the UN, but without the problems of the UN, would support
another
NATO.
Group of politicians. Or sitting around somewhere in Brussels or something like that.
Well, they'd sit in London, in my view. But listen, you've got to admit, Nick, that sometimes decisions on these sort of matters take too long. We need to get it going. We need to be strong, and we're not strong at the moment, I'm afraid. And our ideas on defence, particularly working with allies who we can depend on, I think would make us stronger.
Grateful as ever for your extended time. Thanks, Ed. Sir Ed Davey, leader of the Liberal Democrats, opining on two matters: likelihood, of course, that it will be Andy Burnham as the PM, and 10 years on from Brexit. You know the headlines, they're all various interpretations of what happened yesterday. So let's get a call in instead at 7:28. Alison is in Bury St Edmunds. How shall we politically remember Sir Keir Rodney Starmer? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Well, first I'd just like to say I'm not a staunch Labour voter.
Right.
My dad is, but I'm not.
Did you say your boyfriend is? I didn't hear what you said.
No, my dad.
Your dad. Sorry, your dad is. Right, go ahead. Yep, okay.
And, I'm originally from the Northwest. My dad still lives up there.
Right.
I think, he's tried it. He tried his best, and that's all we can ask for.
Yes.
And I think anybody in the position he was in, with the relentless attack and the relentless... and I guess he's made mistakes. We all make mistakes. But
he made a lot of mistakes, though, didn't he?
Well...
winter fuel payments was madness, surely.
Well, I can be controversial with the winter fuel payment, because I think he was right, but the threshold was a bit too low. He altered that, and now I think it's probably a bit too high. But we won't go into that. That's not why I called. One of the things I think people are missing from yesterday is the Labour membership. Right. Now, I spent a lot of time on X yesterday, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, and within about 20 minutes, I counted 15 who had cancelled their membership.
15, 1-5?
No, 1-5.
Right, okay.
15 in 20 minutes. So if you look at that across, and that's just on my timeline, that's just on people who I exchange things with.
Right.
Now, I'm not in the Labour membership, but I think if they don't get a vote on who the next leader of the Labour Party is, they will not be happy, and I think numbers would fall. I think the way, my dad and my auntie are not Andy Burnham fans at all. He's not this great big person. Yes, he's got a personality, but personality is not everything. I'm not bothered that Keir Starmer was a bit boring and everything. I'd rather have boring. I'd rather have boring and him be calm. I can't even, when I think and look at Andy Burnham at the G7 and Keir Starmer at the G7, there's no contest.
All right.
He's not...
Well, bear in mind we had Boris Johnson at some G7s as well, so it's been an interesting array that we feel.
He was wrong.
Yeah.
He was wrong.
I know. I'm late to the news. My best wishes to your father, Alison. Thank you. We've got to move on. We will have a good day. We will be taking more calls. Coming up after the news in our look at the world of City, farewell to the man once hailed as the greatest central banker of all time, former Fed Reserve Chief Alan Greenspan.
I proceed with 4 or 5 sentences which get increasingly obscure. The congressman thinks I answered the question and goes on to the next one.
He's died aged 100. We'll come back to your views. Politically, how do we remember Sir Keir Starmer? And... it really was, Billy. Absolutely baking in the city. Get ready for these red alerts and possibly the hottest day ever in the United Kingdom. We'll give you full details on that. 7:31, Breakfast with the Nick Ferrari here on LBC. News Time, Dominic Ellis.
Yes, understood. 2 senior Labour MPs are considering running against Andy Burnham to stop him becoming party leader without a formal contest. The Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, and the former Armed Forces Minister, Al Carnes, are said to be weighing up campaigns. The former chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, is expected to be sentenced later for embezzlement. The 61-year-old pleaded guilty last month to illicitly spending more than £400,000 of party funds. And the UK's record for the highest temperature in June could be broken later. Temperatures are forecast to rise above 35 degrees today, with heat continuing to build throughout the middle of this week. LBC weather, sunny and hot in the south, with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east, cloudy in the north, but mostly dry, a high of 37 degrees.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Keir Starmer, after less than 2 years in office, having won a landslide, is out. He has resigned, a resignation forced upon him by his party, with Andy Burnham set to take over. There are so many questions to ask about what happens next and how.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
We made it. These Spanish hills don't muck about. Right, pass us Dad's ashes.
What? You said you'd bring them.
Oh, please, no. Yeah, look on the Ring camera.
Oh.
We've left him on the mantelpiece.
Poor Dad.
Always know what's happening at home with Ring. Our Prime Day deals have landed with up to 60% off selected devices. Head to Amazon today.
There are one or two other names in the frame, but just taking those two as indicative of different directions and different signals that would be interpreted by the city, by the bond markets, by investors. Ed Miliband would scare the pants off the city. There's no two ways about it. His supporters say he has the respect to command the Treasury to get things done. Critics would say that he's far too far to the left and that it would be a very spooky turn of events, that Wes Streeting representing a slightly more centrist, slightly more Blairite, slightly more to the right of the wing of the Labour Party, a bit more palatable. But there's all sorts at stake. And Andy Burnham knows it, which is why The Times reports this morning that he will be giving his first major speech on the economy, setting out his economic credibility and trying to reassure investors that he will abide by the fiscal rules on borrowing and debt and public spending, and that he will put growing the economy at the heart of his ambition. Well, forgive me if I say we've heard all that before. We heard that the government that we are in the dying hours of said that growth was their number one priority, and we haven't had much of it. And that's the reality that Andy Burnham will inherit, and I wish him well if he thinks he can turn it around.
You'll know better than most. Nature abhors a vacuum almost as much as the city does. So how long can we go on wondering whether it's going to be Miliband or Streeting or even Rachel Reeves managed to put a bolt across the top of the door?
Well, the bond traders that we spoke to yesterday are all in a very intense waiting game. And there is some consideration that actually we might not get a huge indication of Andy Burnham's economic agenda for some time, given that if he becomes Prime Minister over the course of the summer, he will then have to put all of his plans down on paper and submit a budget proposal to the OBR 10 weeks ahead of the autumn budget. It's also possible that that budget could, therefore, on that timeline, be delayed. And delayed budgets really do scare the bejeebers out of city investors.
More jobs going to AI. Where and when?
We're talking about Oracle, the global tech giant, the AI infrastructure giant. Their annual report released yesterday shows that since this time last year, they've shed about 21,000 roles in their tech departments, leaves them with about 140,000 full-time employees, down from 162,000 this time last year. They are perfectly honest about this. They say deployment of AI tech across our operations has resulted and may continue to result in reductions to our workforce. So that's about 13% of the workforce of this extraordinarily successful and powerful company founded by great Donald Trump supporter. That would be Larry Ellison, one of the richest people in the world. And he's not alone in this, in steering these huge tech and AI infrastructure companies towards an AI future, whilst also, of course, being buffeted by the very technology that they themselves are launching and supporting.
Let's finish with, arguably, possibly, the best-known American businessman that many people in this country don't know, that the impact they had on their lives. I speak, of course, of Alan Greenspan, dying at 100. It's always sad when someone dies, but goodness me, 100, what an innings. Many glowing obituaries being written. How shall he be remembered?
Well, he will certainly be remembered as one of the most influential and enduring forces in American and therefore international economics. Chairman of the US Federal Reserve, equivalent of governor of our central bank, from 1987 to 2006. Goodness. Now, that job is described as the second most important after the presidency. And he oversaw really a sustained period of US economic growth, one of the most successful economic growth periods in American history. He's been described variously as the god in the machine of American finance. Famously had a sign on his office door that said, "The buck starts here." Now, he did oversee that extraordinary period of growth and prosperity. He took all his inspiration really from the likes of Adam Smith, the great economist, philosopher, and others. His central proposition was that individuals are themselves the best, most rational economic actors, and that rather than trying to collectivize our policy choices to maximize benefits, if we allow each individual to pursue their own self-interest, as he put it, then the whole will benefit. It remains a debated point. I happen to agree with it. There is controversy, and he himself acknowledged that he was rather blindsided by the 2008 financial crisis. caused him to reassess some of his long-held commitments and beliefs. But on the whole, he will be remembered, I suspect, as one of the most influential and successful figures in American finance.
Christian Mayer's editor-in-chief at City AM. Thanks. Talk around the same time tomorrow. I'm asking you how you will remember Keir Starmer. Let's go to some of the social media that's coming in. Mark in Barming, which is in Kent, near Maidstone. A decent man? Question mark. How so? Shutting down private schools because of envy, causing farmers to contemplate life, taking their life because of IHT, inheritance tax changes, shutting down freedom of speech and imprisoning tweeters' opinions while fragrant lawbrokers roam the streets, appointing Mandelson, all this to fit his ideology and narrative. A decent man? I don't think so. For a lawyer, he's got shocking judgment. Staying with this, Kim says Starmer will be remembered as one of the biggest liars, someone who did not care about his country, would rather give our taxpayers' money to illegal immigrants and people who are too lazy to work rather than the hard-working people. This comes in from Richard. Starmer made very few serious mistakes. It's the Labour policy that's rubbish. I don't know about that. You look at Mandelson, you look at taking glasses and suits from a very rich backer, you look at using that backer's apartment after his appointment. We got there eventually. I don't know. There are questions to be asked. All right, let's go to other matters. And as if you need reminding, particularly if you're in London and the South East, was hit with extraordinary storms yesterday, and I hope there's no damage in any of your houses or your gardens. But there are now a series of weather warnings suggesting that we will hit our hottest June day on record. And schools now being advised to close, and even rail companies saying that their rails could actually buckle in the heat. They seem to operate all right in Australia when I lived there, but I don't know. That's another question. Let's talk about schools first. Benji Hire, LBC's reporter at Fielding Primary School in Ealing, West London. Are the pupils turning up this morning, Benji? Morning.
They are, Nick. Parents currently dropping off their kids at the nursery and the primary school here, but they'll be back as soon as midday to pick up their children, because this school is one of a handful across the country closing early due to the hot weather. In an email seen by LBC and sent to parents yesterday, the head teacher of this school said in the interests of health and safety, the school, the nursery, the special educational needs department will all be shut until Friday because the classrooms here will be too hot to teach in. And whilst learning, yes, will continue, it'll be done remotely, online, via Microsoft Teams. The email does acknowledge that temperatures in people's homes may also be challenging. And you can imagine too, Nick, that having no daytime care will come as a significant inconvenience to many parents, though some I've spoken to here do understand the decision.
They're executing the risk assessment. As far as I'm concerned, health and safety trumps everything. I know people will be annoyed. People won't be able to go to work. I myself got to come home early, but frankly, my kids 7 and 4. I'd sooner that they're not sat in a 38-degree classroom.
Yet, as you mentioned, Nick, this is not an isolated incident. Multiple schools across the UK have already closed early, dozens confirming they'll shut at points in coming days, some even having to postpone exams because their interiors cannot be cooled adequately. Unions say it's about time that these schools were fitted with air conditioning, others blaming climate change, the design of school buildings. All to say, Nick, that, whilst these conditions have been rare in the past, it could be a sign to expect more regular interference to education as school facilities get older and the weather gets warmer.
Benji Hire reporting from that school in Ealing. Let's ring straight into the conversation. Kirsty, who I think has a child who attends that school. Kirsty, good morning to you.
Good morning.
OK, I won't ask your child's name. It's not appropriate. What age is he or she?
So she is 5, so she's in reception.
OK. Now, I would imagine you and your husband or your partner thought that you could go to your respective places of work and have a, quotes, normal day, if days are ever normal as a parent. And I know I am one. My children are a lot older than yours, by the way. So what does this decision do to you and your arrangements, and how correct do you think it is?
So firstly, so I'm a co-parent, actually. So I actually am on my own this week, which adds an added dimension to things. So for me, my biggest issue is obviously I have to work. On Thursday, I have a client meeting, which has been in the diary for weeks. We've got people travelling in. If I don't attend that meeting, that's going to have a massive disruption to things. So as parents, we figure things out, of course, but right now I have no idea what I'm going to do. And there are hundreds of parents. I think your reporter said that there were a handful of schools. I think that there are a lot of schools actually that are closing. Yep. Some are closed all day today as well. So the impact is on working families. Do I think it's right? So your previous caller said that it was right. He's got a 4- and 7-year-old. Absolutely. But I don't think this is not a school closure issue. It's a preparedness issue. I completely support schools prioritising children's safety in extreme heat. My concern isn't the actual closure itself. My concern is that we seem to still be surprised by events that experts have been warning about for many years. And we're seeing trends across Europe. Europe is the fastest warming continent. And why are we not preparing for these things in advance? Because ultimately, it means that families are paying.
But I think it's worse than that, if I may. And you're right in everything you say, Kirsty. I think when you consider these are young minds and they go to school and their minds are shaped and modelled by that, I would want it to be a school system that we are going to find our way through this. It is not going to be easy, and we're not going to have running races, and we're not going to play hockey or what would it be, cricket or whatever it might be, but we are going to find a way through. We are not going to quit. And that's what my children have long since left school. They're having their own children. But I don't like that sense that it could put into children. Kirsty?
Yeah, completely, because, we've got some Teams access. Last minute, I didn't expect to have a laptop ready for my 5-year-old. So, of course, I don't have just a laptop ready for her to join Teams calls. She has 2 lessons a day on Teams. So that doesn't really help me in terms of what I need to do throughout the day. And we now need to share a laptop. So ironically, I have a conflict of Teams meetings with my 5-year-old who will need to use the laptop at the same time. So I completely agree that the disruption cannot be this last minute. We need to have a better plan in place for these kinds of events. It feels like we have learned nothing from COVID and having to prepare for these events that we are being told constantly they're going to come more often.
Well, I think we see that. Best wishes with your daughter's educational career. Kirsty, thank you. That's your daughter who goes to that Fielding Primary School in Ealing. I don't understand this, right? And I don't support this, but parents get fined if you take your child away from school for an unregulated holiday. You'll get a fine. But schools can close down almost on a whim because it's too hot. How does that work? What the hell lesson does that send to our children? If you care to go to some history books, you will see photographs of children doing their lessons in schools and their gas masks are on their desks by them. Now, I'm not saying I want to go back to that for a moment, but it speaks to what you try and inculcate into your children. Oh, it's too hot, we're closing down the school. No, you're not. We're going to work out, children, can you all bring in an umbrella? So when you have to move across the playground to get to a different classroom, you're not going to get sunstroke. Let's put some tarpaulins up. Obviously, we can't have sports, so we're going to do something else. Where is the will to get through? God only knows what kind of generation we'll be producing at this rate. Coming up after the news, an attack on Nigel Farage of course, there's 10 years since the Brexit vote, coming from a senior member of the government. Farage, is a threat to national security. But why? You'll find after the 7:48 LBC News headlines, Dominic Ellis.
LBC understands 2 senior Labour MPs are considering running against Andy Burnham to stop him becoming party leader without a formal contest. The former chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, is expected to be sentenced later for embezzlement. And the UK's record for the highest temperature in June could be broken later today. LBC weather sunny and hot in the south with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east. Cloudy in the north but mostly dry. A high of 37 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Severe delays continue on the Essex stretch of the M25, anti-clockwise to junction 26 at Waltham Abbey after an accident. And also delays on the M1 southbound from the M25 to junction 5 at Watford. And that's because of the emergency repair works. In East London, the A12 is closed northbound because of flooding. It's closed from Chadwell Heath to Romford. Lots of other roads through London are closed, including in Twickenham. Heath Road is closed under the railway bridge. On the trains, because of the flooding, there are quite a few problems, including the Heathrow Express having to run a reduced service. And on the Underground, there's no service on the Circle line, and the Bakerloo line is part suspended.
This is LBC.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
And start doing more of what you love from anywhere. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest combined network through merger of Vodafone and 3 based on number of mobile sites versus major providers. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN location.
defence contracts with Norway, with Turkey, so right across Europe, EU and indeed European countries. And we're doing that for the safety of the nation. We know there's a burden of defence spending moved across to Europe, and that's what we're doing. And I've been to Estonia, I've been to Poland. I know the threat that Russia faces, and I'm contrasting that work, important work for our nation's security, with Nigel Farage's views on these matters.
The threat that Russia faces, or the threat that Russia poses, just to clarify?
No, just to clarify, the threat that Russia poses.
Yes, not faces.
Right. Absolutely. The threat that the Europe faces
That's the old
from
sub-editor
Russia.
coming out there, Nick. Just saying the wrong word. Just quitting that, changing that one for you.
Nick, I appreciate it. I appreciate it as ever. And contrast that with Nigel Farage, who's talked about his admiration for Putin. The fact that the EU had blood on its hands for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Not that it was Russia violating another country's territory, but also think in Wales, Nick. I knew, obviously, in Wales, Nathan Gill, who was the Reform leader in Wales, who's currently doing 10.5 years in prison for taking money from a pro-Russian politician in Ukraine for spewing pro-Kremlin, pro-Putin propaganda in the European Parliament. So forgive me if I'm not raising those pretty important issues about Nigel Farage when we're doing this important work for the defence of the nation.
And another important issue, Minister, as I'm speaking with Mr Farage later, where do you understand we are with this £5 million personal gift? It's currently under investigation, and Mr Farage offering no real defence. Where are you on this, Minister?
Well, I'm sure, Nick, you will take him to task on this.
Well, I need the bullets, and then I can.
Right. So far, we've had two different explanations from Nigel Farage. There's one where he said it was about personal security. We've had another where he said it was a reward for campaigning in the Brexit referendum. So perhaps he can tell us why it is he's ever received this money, why he decided for so long to keep it a secret, and why even now he won't be straight with us as to why on earth he received this huge amount of money. And I've noticed, Nick, I mean, Nigel Farage is not shy on coming on the media, but I haven't exactly noticed an enthusiasm from him to come out over the last 4 or 5 weeks to answer questions on it.
But lastly on this, won't he simply say, Minister, he wasn't an MP at the time of receipt of funds?
But you see, the parliamentary rules don't quite work like that, because if you do have, donations for campaigning and other things, you should declare them in any event. So if you had, say, a donation that was for the election where you were elected to Parliament or in the period of campaigning, you've still got to declare it. So that doesn't mean it's outside the rules.
All right, that's coming up later. As is possibly a vote to be the leader of the Labour Party. Who's your choice, Minister?
So, first of all, Nick, I'll give you my choice, but just to pay tribute, I thought it was a very dignified statement from the Prime Minister yesterday on the steps of Downing Street. Definitely the person, Nick, to take us from 2019 to 2024 as party leader, and the person who inherited that country. If you think back to 2024, public services on their knees, difficult economic circumstances, riots on the streets. This was a Prime Minister.
You just said if you think back to 2024. I think you mean if you think back to 2019, public services.
Both those things, Nick, because 2019 lost the general election, we lost the general election, then he won. 2024, our economic inheritance meant that he was the person to lead us into government in the first 2 years. But yes, he accepted yesterday, he isn't the person to lead us into the next general election.
I see. Okay.
But I am going to be supporting Andy Burnham, Nick, and I'm supporting him for two reasons. Number one, I think I'm looking for someone with a track record of delivery that he's shown as the Mayor of Greater Manchester. But second, who is best placed to defeat reform? And I think he's shown that in Makerfield in the last week.
Won't be the first time that the nation is led by someone who served as mayor in one of our great cities. If you look at you've worked it out. If you look at the previous example, why should it be any different? Running a city is probably very different from running a nation, I would suggest, Minister.
It's certainly different, but I think Andy Burnham is a very different person from Boris Johnson. But I also think, Nick, going forward, what the Prime Minister was doing yesterday was setting out the possibility now of a swift and orderly transition. To pick up the Boris Johnson point, in contrast, Boris Johnson, when he was clinging by his fingernails in Downing Street, we saw dozens of resignations, 3 education secretaries in a day at one point. That's not what the Prime Minister wanted, and I think he put the country first by setting out the timetable he did yesterday.
It was dignified. I don't know him as well as you, but I've done many phone-ins with the Prime Minister, so I know him moderately well. He is a dignified man. But I thought it was appalling that he had to give this speech where he should be allowed due time and respect, being drowned out by, and I know you're Minister of European Relations, by the campaigner playing Ode to Joy. Where are you on that, Minister?
Oh, I really didn't like that Nick, and I'd be the first person to come on your show and defend the right to protest. But, you know, I've said this in different situations. I don't just say it party politically. I just think when you have profound moments like that, whatever your party politics, this is someone who led and is leading our country. And I think when the public hear a statement like that leaving, they're entitled to do so, it seems to me.
Couldn't agree more. OK, so we fancy Andy Burnham for the top job. Who would be the perfect running mate, as it were, as his Chancellor?
Well, look, that is way above my pay grade, Nick. Both.
Well, you're allowed an opinion. I actually appreciate you don't make the decision, but you must think, well, I tell you what, I think Ed Miliband's the go-to guy, or Wes Streeting would be a healthy option. Which is it? I've
never advised any of the leaders that I have served in opposition and in government, either on their shadow cabinets or indeed on their cabinets. I have been very privileged to serve, and of course, Nick, you'll know from the number of times I've been on your show, I'm always privileged to be asked to serve our country, but I don't offer advice to our leaders like that.
Finally, there was, and this is very much on your brief, Minister, there was a summit set for Brussels towards the end of next month, July 22. Up, off, in holding, where are we?
So I'm afraid, Nick, there won't be a summit on the 22nd of July. I was speaking to European counterparts about that yesterday. Indeed, I was speaking to you last week about the package to deliver at that summit. We do, however, have an agreement with the EU that there will be a summit in 2026. I will continue over the next few weeks with the technical work to prepare for that, but obviously we need to get that summit back in as soon as possible.
And this is because of changes with the British Prime Minister, I assume. It is solely down to that Minister. Yeah,
and that's what the discussion I had with the EU yesterday.
All right, grateful for your time covering a range of subjects. Thanks very much, Nick Thomas-Symonds, Paymaster General and European Union Relations Minister. We'll be asking you later, by the way, whether you think there was any dignity allowed to that PM with the playing of that music by that dreadful, dreary protester. It's 8 o'clock, LBC News Headlines. Dominic Ellis.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, LBC understands two senior Labour figures are considering running against Andy Burnham for the Labour leadership. Some backbenchers are reportedly not happy with the idea that the new Makerfield MP could become Prime Minister without a formal contest. The Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, and the former Armed Forces Minister, Al Carnes, are understood to be considering a challenge. The Paymaster General, Nick Thomas-Symonds, has just told Nick Ferrari at breakfast who he's backing.
I am going to be supporting Andy Burnham, Nick, and I'm supporting him for two reasons. Number one, I think I'm looking for some of the track record of delivery that he's shown as the Mayor of Greater Manchester. But second, who is best placed to defeat reform? And I think he's shown that in Makerfield in the last week.
Nominations for the Labour leadership contest open next month. Andy Burnham is expected to set out his plans for the economy in a speech next week. The former chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, is expected to be sentenced later for embezzlement. The 61-year-old pleaded guilty last month to illicitly spending more than £400,000 of party funds. Murrell, who is the estranged husband of Nicola Sturgeon, used the money to buy luxury goods, including a motorhome. The UK's record for the highest temperature in June, 35.6 degrees Celsius, could be broken later. Some schools are shut or closing early ahead of Wednesday's red extreme heat alert for parts of England and Wales. The warning, meaning a danger to life, will come into force from 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. The ticket resale company StubHub has been ordered to refund more than 50,000 customers over hidden fees. £590,000 is to be given back, amounting to an average of £10 per transaction. The competition's watchdog has also fined the resale site close to £1 million for failing to be upfront about mandatory charges. And England can book their spot in the knockout stages of the World Cup with a win against Ghana tonight. Thomas Tuchel's side started the tournament with an impressive 4-2 win against Croatia last week. Tuchel says the squad is confident and they aim to maintain their strong start.
We know what makes us strong and we know the capability and the potential of the players, and we believe and trust in this group, and there's no other thought in our minds. We take it step by step. Like I said, a very different game than the Croatia game, and we have to be ready.
In the city, the FTSE 100 has just reopened at 10,437. It closed up 74 yesterday. The pound buys $1.32 and €1.16. LBC weather, sunny and hot in the south today, with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east. Cloudy in the north, but mostly dry. A high of 37 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Dominic Ellis.
At Waitrose, you can now get your everyday favourites at new, lower prices. So, butter is lower, honey is lower, chickpeas are lower. Onions, pesto, mushrooms, chicken thighs, pasta, beef mince, garlic and broccoli are all lower, and yep, you guessed it, lower. Get all these and more everyday favourites at new, lower prices at Waitrose. Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected lines and stores, subject to availability.
And if we're talking about trains... a well-known and much loved by some commentators, furious because she was offered a seat on the tube. The she being Rachel Johnson. You'll hear from my LBC colleague later in this hour.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 60 60 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Those Johnsons are never happy, are they? So, if you look at the country at the moment, looking towards another Prime Minister, 10 in 7 years, and 10 years since Brexit, we need some wise counsel as to where we find ourselves. Couldn't find anyone, but Sir Nick Clegg, the former Deputy Prime Minister and leader of the Liberal Democrats, was available. Sir Nick, of course, used to appear regularly here on LBC. He's now general partner at the London-based venture capitalist Hero Capital. We want to hear more about that. He's also written some books, How to Stop Brexit and Make Britain Great Again. That went well. How to Take the Perfect Penalty for England and Going Shopping with Peter Murrell. So, good to have you on, Sir Nick. Good to have you.
Excellent introduction. You really are scraping the barrel this
I'm
morning.
doing, yes, scraping the Murrell. Yes, I'm doing everything I can possibly think of. Much to talk about Brexit, and I know when you kindly found time for us, we were going to talk about 10 years from the vote, but I think we've got to talk about more pertinent things. Sir Nick, we know which way the nation voted 10 years ago. Since then, fairly soon, will be on our 7th Prime Minister. What did it do to the emotional psyche of the United Kingdom voter? Morning, Nick.
It is weird, isn't it? We voted to leave the European Union, and yet we're resembling sort of Italy of old. Remember the Italian governments would sort of come and go every 6 months.
And yet now it's four in 16 years, Nick. 4 in 16 years.
I know. And who would have thought that the last government that actually was sort of stable for any duration of time was a coalition government composed of two parties. I remember when David Cameron and I formed the coalition in 2010, people were safely predicting it would sort of collapse by summer, and yet it lasted for half a decade, which seemed like an unimaginably long period of time when you consider what we've had, Johnson, Sunak, Truss, May, and now Starmer since then. I don't think Brexit's probably the only reason. I suspect there are a bunch of other reasons, but I do think it's one of the biggest drivers, because in a sense, ever since the country took that decision by a sort of wafer-thin majority, but nonetheless took that decision, and then a particularly hard version of Brexit was implemented, it's as if no one really wants to talk about the elephant in the room. I mean, Brexit clearly is going very badly. I mean, just look at the queues at the borders, look at all the red tape that our exporters face. It was supposed to relieve them of red tape. Look at the enfeeblement of our economy. And no one actually really wants to address it. The Labour Party stuck its head in the sand. Conservative Party, of course, doesn't want to talk about it because they don't want to be reminded they support it. Even Nigel Farage doesn't want to talk about it. So I think one of the things in politics, much like in life, is if you just don't address something that is ailing you, it just creates an intense amount of dissatisfaction amongst voters, and in this case amongst Labour MPs. And so I think Burnham, or whoever becomes Prime Minister, I think the country is crying out for someone who just at least acknowledges the enormity of the big structural challenges the country faces, rather than constantly dancing around them.
What is extraordinary is, and I'd be interested in your personal opinion here, some of the people that the country's burnt through, you would have thought on paper could have made quite decent PMs, not least the one who's going out now, the one prior to him, Rishi Sunak, I thought had something about him, and yet we just seem to burn through them. So, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer that well. I've known them a bit. They're both self-evidently decent people, they never struck me as politicians in an odd kind of way. They're both slightly sort of technocratic, managerial characters. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. It's good to be that in other roles. But I think when you are leading the country, when you're sitting in number 10, you've also got to be a compelling storyteller about where you feel the country was, where it is now, and where you want to take it in the future. And crucially, when you get into power, and I can certainly vouch for this in the 5 years I was sort of co-running a government with David Cameron, you just have very little time to think. So you've got to do your thinking before you get into number 10, because the moment you get in there, every single millisecond of your time is called for. You're asked to make 1,000 different decisions, many of them between competing and equally unattractive choices every single day. If you haven't preceded your time in power with a clear diagnosis of what you want to do in power, I think you really do get found out. And my real worry, that's clearly the case with Keir Starmer. He thought it was just enough to constantly say, oh, the beastly Tories is what done it. And then he found when he got into power that just being sanctimonious about your opponents doesn't make the sums add up. And I do slightly worry that Burnham might fall into the same trap. It's all very well to sort of, condemn your opponents, but you have to have hard-edged decisions. How are you going to balance the books? How are you going to grow the economy? How are you going to relieve costs on businesses? How are you going to stop the left actually making the situation worse by adding more costs and more regulation on employers who create jobs in the economy? I just think if you don't do that, the hard yards beforehand, it's very difficult to be a successful Prime Minister in office.
You mentioned the economy, and you'll recall if you were listening or you've read it, Sir Keir said that in fact our economy is growing faster than any of our peers. A response from you on that, Sir Nick?
Well, maybe one quarter here or there, but the truth is the country, I mean, actually, if you look at the objective facts, the last time this country grew sustainably, not just a quarter here or there, but quarter after quarter, year after year, stronger than most of the rest of the rich world, was from roughly kind of middle of 2012 to the Brexit vote. And in that period, in fact, the last full year of the coalition government, 2014, would you believe it, the UK's growth rate was almost 3%, annual growth rate was faster than the United States, which would be unimaginable now. So I think for Keir Starmer to somehow claim that he's in any way sorted out the economic growth issue, I think is just not sustained by the facts. And of course, part of the problem is that endless political instability makes it hard for investors to make their own choices. Political instability has an economic cost. If you keep chopping and changing, it's just very difficult for wealth creators to really take the risks and make the bets, the long-term bets they need to in order to be successful. That's why, certainly during my time in office, having ministers in place for many years rather than just many weeks made a big difference, because it allowed other people to plan their own affairs as well.
We can talk about Brexit, but there are some things that have come the way of the United Kingdom they couldn't avoid. I talk about things such as the COVID pandemic, Ukraine, the situation in Iran. That's a lot for any nation to endure. Then you throw Brexit into the mix. What happens then, Sir Nick?
That's right. I think it is absolutely the case that we have been buffeted, punched really, by one often sometimes self-inflicted. I think Brexit, you could say, is self-inflicted. I think you could probably argue that one of the biggest of all, the 2008 financial crisis, wasn't exactly self-inflicted, but it was probably worse for us than anyone else because of the disproportionate role of the City of London and financial services as a relation to our economy compared to others. It's much more important, for instance, than Wall Street is to the US economy, which is so much bigger. So we've had 2008, then we had a period of time where people like me and others tried to steady the ship. And then, as you say, you had Brexit, you've had Ukraine, you've had Iran, you've had Trump 1 and Trump 2, and so on and so forth. But, that happens in life. I mean, it certainly happens in politics. Things happen that you can't account for, which is, in my view, why it's all the more important to double down on the policies that we know lead to prosperity. Trying to be fiscally responsible, not weighing more costs on employers, on businesses, reducing taxes on wealth creation, investing in our science base, keeping our trade relations open with our biggest trade partners. It's not it's not, I mean, it's difficult, I get it, but it's not actually rocket science what makes an open trading economy like ours prosper. And for some reason, it just eluded government after government of all persuasions over the last decade to get that mix right.
Last minute or so together, from memory, your sons are going to be of college age or finishing A-level age or something like that. Do you see a time that your sons will go into some form of new Europe? I'm not going to call it the EU, a restructured European club of some sort. Will that happen in their lifetimes, Sir Nick?
Yeah, I think it will. And it won't be the European Union of today. It certainly won't be the European Union we left in 2016. There's no point crying over spilt milk and trying to go, turn the clock back. But I do think, I've always actually thought for a while now that our fate might end up being quite closely linked to Ukraine's. I mean, we've spilt a lot of sort of treasure and sweat, quite rightly, in defending Ukrainian independence. The Ukrainian people desperately want to be part of the European. So does Iceland, so does Moldova, so do many other countries. There are a lot of countries now wanting to join the European Union. The European Union itself will have to change considerably to accommodate a country the size of Ukraine.
Would they be up for that, Sir Nick?
We'll see. I think some will and some won't, and you'll get different responses from different people. I think they'd be mad not to embrace Ukraine. I think it'll be a great step forward for the stability and strength of the European continent. And my point is, I find it almost unimaginable to think that Ukraine could end up at the sort of top table of Europe, and that we in the UK are not sitting alongside them in some shape or form. So I think, it's been 10 years since the Brexit referendum. I think maybe by 2036, in another 10 years, we'll be either sitting alongside Ukraine in a reformed European Union or well on the way to doing so.
Finally, a word on Hero Capital. What is it you and your colleagues are doing there?
Well, we raise money to invest in European tech companies because I just strongly believe we can't spend all our time relying on American and Chinese tech companies. We need to build our own homegrown, world-beating champions. And that's
like a Silicon, sorry to be crude, but like a European Silicon Valley, effectively.
Yeah, we're never going to be just like Silicon Valley, but we invent great things in this country. We've got a fantastic inventive culture. We've got a great academic base. We've got great scientists. What we're terrible at is scaling them up to becoming, big companies which we can use long into the future. And that's what Hero Capital is trying to focus on in particular areas to really try and find the next, if you like, European Google.
Well, I'm glad you've got time to do it, because your next book, Peter Mandelson's Guide to Diplomacy, I'm looking
putting the finishing touches to that one. Yeah.
Enjoy. Best wishes to your family. Thanks as ever. Good to see you again. Sir Nick Clegg, former Deputy Prime Minister, of course, leader of the Lib Dems and one of those big pro-Remain campaigners. Coming up after the news, we go to Northern Ireland for an astonishing trial involving a senior politician who's been around for years, convicted of some vile child sexual offences, but currently keeping his knighthood. Sir Geoffrey Donaldson. It's 8:17, LBC News Headlines. Dominic Ellis.
LBC understands two senior Labour figures are considering running against Andy Burnham for the Labour leadership. The UK's record for the highest temperature in June could be broken later. And the ticket resale company StubHub has been ordered to refund more than 50,000 customers over hidden fees. LBC weather, sunny and hot in the south, with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east. Cloudy in the north, but mostly dry. A high of 37 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Long delays continue on the M25 anti-clockwise from junction 27 at the M11 to 26 at Waltham Abbey. And that's following an accident. And also delays on the M1 southbound from junction 8 at Hemel Hempstead to 5 at the A41 after an accident. The emergency repair works are now taking place. Because of flooding, the A12 is closed northbound from Shadwell Heath and Romford. But the flooding also causing problems on the trains. A reduced Heathrow Express and South Western Railway services are disrupted to and from Barnes. Still no trains running between Luton and Bedford. The investigation works continue. On the Underground, the District line is only able to run between Upminster and Whitechapel, and the Circle line remains suspended.
LBC. Here's a tale of two commuters. Steve was in a rush and needed to park near the station. Jane also needed a space and booked in advance with Your Parking Space. Steve had a meeting at 9 and panic at 8. Nowhere to park. Jane, she's already in the office and enjoying that morning latte. With Your Parking Space, you can browse thousands of spaces across London and reserve one instantly. Use the
in a criminal conviction. Mark, you and I have been around long enough to remember just what size of figure this was in Northern Irish politics. For some of my listeners who are effectively waking up to this, just do a pen picture if you would.
Jeffrey Donaldson, when he was arrested on Good Friday 2 years ago, was at the height of his powers. He was the leader of the largest unionist party here in Northern Ireland, the DUP. He had just negotiated a key agreement with the government, the Safeguarding the Union deal, which restored power to Stormont. Just in the week before he was arrested, he was in the White House getting plaudits for his role in brokering a compromise. And this was after a decades-long career here in Northern Ireland, in which he featured in many of the most high-profile stories. He was there at the time of the Good Friday Agreement, walking out at the last minute because he wasn't happy with some of the details. He continued to play a major role, for instance, in the government deal, which put Theresa May into power when the DUP propped her up. So, yeah, this was somebody who, you'll know, Nick, was a frequent person appearing on our airwaves, a very plausible politician. People like me, political journalists in Northern Ireland, would have dealt with him on a day-in, day-out basis, both on and off the record. And the shock when he was arrested was palpable. And everybody in Northern Ireland, I think, has been following every detail of this trial that's played out over the last 4 weeks in Newry Courthouse.
Mark, you've seen him come and you've seen him go over there. What was his skill set?
He was extremely plausible. He was always very sort of polite. He was very shrewd in terms of his sort of political skill. But what this trial has revealed is he was also a liar and a hypocrite because he portrayed himself throughout his political career as a God-fearing Christian, a born-again Christian who wore a pin all the time when he was appearing in Westminster or anywhere else, a Christian symbol. He would appear home to his faithful unionist supporters as a teetotal, God-fearing man. But there are an increasing number of stories coming out that there was hypocrisy, that when he was away from Northern Ireland, he was a heavy drinker. That's nothing criminal in that.
Right.
But it does point to the fact that he was leading a double life. During the course of this trial, his wife said that she believed that he'd been involved in a number of infidelities. But what was more heinous and what I think none of us could have imagined was the child abuse that he was clearly involved in, which 2 separate complainants testified about. And now, whilst they were known as Complainant A and Complainant B, adult women now, but primary school children when they were abused by Jeffrey Donaldson, now it's very clear that he was, leading this incredible double life and was guilty of the most heinous crimes.
Lastly, when you were told that you would interview him, was he a good interview? Was he something you would look forward to? Was he a clubbable kind of guy? Was he quite a complex person? Did he seem fulfilled? Human to human, how would you remember that side of him, Mark?
I have to say that in all my dealings with him, he was normally one of the politicians I would find it easiest to deal with. You get some difficult characters in Northern Ireland politics who can give you a hard time, but he would almost always take calls at whatever time of the day. He would almost always give decent answers. Literally a few weeks, maybe less than a fortnight before his arrest, I was chairing a debate between him and another leader of the Ulster Unionist Party about how he saw the future. And I think he always thought he would be the leader that united unionism. But that's all in tatters now. Some of his opponents are questioning the deal that he struck and wondering whether there was any kind of leverage because of what was going on in his life. There's a lot of speculation that will happen, I think, in the weeks to come.
And also speculation, lastly, Mark, I mean, shouldn't he be stripped? Is there a sense in Northern Ireland he should be stripped of his knighthood?
Absolutely. Right. I mean, he was he was a trade envoy to Egypt and Cameroon, and he was suspended from those roles very shortly after his arrest. There are now, I think, universal calls here in Northern Ireland for his knighthood to be removed. I think that will go to the Forfeiture Committee. He is still a member of the Privy Council, and it's maybe a little bit surprising that he continued in that role. They've maybe decided to let the trial play out, but I do know that in the case of Peter Mandelson, they have moved prior to any legal proceedings there to remove Peter Mandelson from the Privy Council. So it's maybe a little bit surprising that they've waited this long. But I think that all of that is a foregone conclusion, because Jeffrey Donaldson spent last night in Maghaberry Jail, which is a high-security prison in the constituency that he represented for 25 years. So he must have been, or 28 years, so he must have been in and out of that jail many times in his capacity as an MP and a political leader. But last night he was in as yet another inmate.
Thanks for your extended time this morning, Mark. Good speaking with you. Mark Devonport, journalist, broadcaster, former BBC Ireland correspondent, coming to your calls on Sir Keir Starmer. Amanda, you'll be the first caller. We talked around this time in the previous hour about the number of schools that are closing, as we hear that shows weather alerts. Les in Essex, I think it's ridiculous schools are closing because of the heat. They closed because of the snow and the frost. Now they're closing because it's too hot. This is all because of litigation. Keep the schools open. Pay the parents £60 each if you stay shut. That's referencing the fines, obviously, that parents are charged. Tarsem says, how would we cope in places like Africa and India? Kids go to school in 40, sometimes 50 degrees with no air conditioning. Evan and West Wales, your listeners already moan about paying too much tax for hospitals and prisons and roads. They're hardly likely to be happy to pay more for air conditioning to be put into schools. I just want to check I can read this. Yes, Julie, in Somerset, my granddaughter's school in Somerset has recently had aircon in each classroom. The parents were asked to donate to purchase it, but they're having to close, as the trust says all their schools must close at 12:30 today. There's no need, as they could quite easily go to school. That's pretty sickening. You have a whip round to pay for air conditioning in your children's classrooms, then, and I know it's an unprecedented heat wave, the heat wave comes up, right, they've all got to go home at 12:30. What did I pay for the bloody air conditioning for? How does that work? By the way, if you can afford one of those mobile air conditioning units, because I live in a Victorian house, so I can't build that, they are just fantastic. They really dry you out, though. I mean, you wake up in the middle of the night, you've got to have a glass of decent red by the side of the bed because you're so dried out. Whoops, you've got to have a decent glass of sparkling water, is what I said. Right, let's talk about Keir Starmer. Amanda's in High Wycombe. Are you furious with the media?
I am, Nick. I think
vent your fury. Go for me. Come on, go for me. Beat me like a rented mule.
The way that they treated Keir was just awful. You know, he had his...
Didn't he bring on himself, Amanda?
Well, some instances, yes, because some instances they didn't follow what we would think would be, you know, traditional Labour policy. But I would put it to you that they treated him basically. I always say treated him like a Meghan Markle. You know, she couldn't. If she did good, you know.
Well, Meghan Markle didn't appoint Peter Mandelson, did she?
No. But I do think that they went all in on him from right.
But it was Lord Mandelson's associations with Epstein were well known. Epstein was a convicted child sex offender, and all Keir Starmer kept saying was, my sympathies are with the victims. Well, if you have such sympathy for the victims, don't appoint a bloke who's quite friendly with the person who's carrying out some of the crimes. Surely. I mean, that is an appalling judgment.
Right, true. I mean, that was a complete mess. It was a complete mess. But at the same time, the same people that would say, you know, we can say Epstein, etc. Same people would have, you know, and do let Trump off for being the way he is and not apologising. You know, to all the...
Tell me what he's achieved. Instead of me knocking you and saying that, what is it that you think we should actually be remembering him for?
To be honest, I think a safe pair of hands in this, you know, the world we're in right now. You know, I know everybody says, oh, he's a decent guy and everything.
Yes,
and I do think he's a decent guy, safe pair of hands. He was absolutely fabulous on the world stage.
Do you think, though, that if the media had been a little more relaxed, he'd been afforded a bit more time?
Yeah, I do, because, you know, I know everybody says, you know, like you just said, you know, the elephant in the room is Brexit. And personally, I don't think any British Prime Minister can be successful after Brexit.
All right, Amanda, thank you. I hope you felt you vented some of your fury. Our conversation will continue. Coming up after the news... One well-known commentator and journalist furious that she was offered a seat on the tube. That well-known journalist is one for the LBC, Rachel Johnson. She'll be joining us after the show. And you try and make a dignified speech as you say farewell. or you try and say what's coming up on the show, and some idiot decides to keep playing this music. Isn't it time that was outlawed? Oh, and Nigel Farage in the next hour too. 8:31, breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari. LBC, Nick Ferrari. Headlines, Dominic Ellis.
It's understood too, senior Labour MPs are considering running against Andy Burnham to stop him becoming party leader without a formal contest. The Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, Darren Jones, and the former Armed Forces Minister, Al Carnes, are understood to be considering a challenge. The UK's record for the highest temperature in June, 35.6 degrees Celsius, could be broken later. Some schools are shut or closing early ahead of Wednesday's red extreme heat alert for parts of England and Wales. And the ticket resale company StubHub has been ordered to refund more than 50,000 customers over hidden fees. £590,000 is to be given back, amounting to an average of £10 per transaction. LBC weather, sunny and hot in the south with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east. Cloudy in the north but mostly dry, a high of 37 degrees.
This is LBC.
Tony, what do you want to tell me? Good morning.
Scott has called from Glasgow. Hi, Scott.
Jane's in Camden first. Hi, Jane.
We have an opportunity to turn the tide, to make people see that politics can make a positive difference, to make people feel hope again.
Hear every side of the story.
Andy Burnham's brought nothing near what he claims he has to the northwest.
Keir Starmer's time's up. This could also signal the end for reform. And I think if Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister, he could unite the left.
I think people in the South underestimate the strength of feeling there is about the way that people feel they've been left behind.
Andy Burnham is not a team player. He just thinks he could just win a by-election and become Prime Minister.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
Get ready for Small Charity Week from the 22nd of June, helping small charities change lives in our local communities. Find out more at biggive.org.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
London, the app for black cabs is here. Jump! Get about with drivers who have the world-famous knowledge and know every street in
the woman. And so I couldn't, and so I was so struck by it. I was so shocked by it. It was like, do I really look as if I can't stand on the Central line?
Well, let's hit the who, what, where, when, why, how. The tube station that I would imagine you use is the one with a lot of steps, isn't it?
Oh, I'd gone from Holland Park to Tottenham Court Road, and I always take the steps, even though there's a sign saying do not use the steps because there are 93 of them.
Yes.
Right? I got on the very hot Central Line to come in to present my show that Friday, and I was standing up, reading stuff on my phone, and I heard this voice saying, "Excuse me, would you like to sit down?" So I assumed they were talking to somebody else. The voice repeated, Do I want to sit down? And I realised that the whole carriage was staring at me, and this kind young man was sort of hovering over his seat. And I shook my head furiously. I said, absolutely not. Anyway, and then I kept telling people about it, and they were going like, yes. And I kept waiting for them to say, but of course you don't look like you can't stand. And anyway,
what is the etiquette? I, as I think you're aware, I am a bloke. I don't use the underground a great deal for insurance reasons. What should be the etiquette as and when I give a seat up to a train or an underground train? Rachel Johnson.
Well, I think
Look, I mean, this has been a real talking point on. I mean, actually, I did it in the Spectator and my Substack, and so this piece has had a long shelf life. It's been a real.
Not a lot going on in your life at the moment, then, Rachel. Huh?
No, but it's had a kind of reaction from women who say things like, "I'm 67 and I think I look quite nippy," and I'm always really surprised. I think the general consensus is, if a man offers you his seat, you should take it, because it reinforces the politesse of offering a lady the seat.
Yes.
Whether it's a younger lady, a pregnant lady, an older woman, you know what I mean? And so I think it was a breach of etiquette that I didn't accept it politely and with good grace. Like
so if you had your time over,
accepting the game was up. You have to do it with good grace.
But if you had your time over, an ageing Rachel Johnson would take the seat.
I think you would. You have to, just to acknowledge the gesture.
I've been left where I've done that, and the lady has not taken the seat. And you can't sit down again as the bloke. You just have to look at this. That's my space. See that? That was where my bottom was. There we go. That little area there. I got all of me into that. Did he sit down again?
I was so embarrassed and shook that I didn't dare look at him to see what he was doing.
Lastly, when you were pregnant, people used to offer their seats much more readily back then?
No, you see, you get cross then as well. So you get cross if people
can't work
don't
with some
offer,
women, can you?
Men can't win. You get cross if men don't offer you their seat when you're pregnant, and you get cross when they do offer your seat when you're old.
Rachel Johnson, the unique Rachel Johnson, is on the LBC team sheet, Friday nights from 7. Thanks, Rachel. Look after yourself, best of the family. And that piece is in today's Times too. It's also on her Substack, and presumably she'll be happy to give you a call should you so desire. Marilyn's in Chadwell Heath. What do you make of Rachel's behaviour? Good morning.
Hello, good morning. I am shocked at the conversation.
Uh-oh.
I normally like to listen to Rachel and on the radio now and again.
Yeah, no,
and
I agree with that.
Her
Yeah.
talk like that. I am shocked. If I get a young man offer me a seat, all right, whatever. But I always say thank you, or a young man to help me. You know, you get on the bus first. I go, oh, how polite. Or young school kids, oh, how polite. What a lovely young man. You know, why is she making something like this? Whatever next for men, this, I'm sorry, but I've really lost all faith
Respect
in
for her, right. And also, I think it did leave the bloke in a rather embarrassing position, poor guy.
Well, so what is this? What is anyone supposed to do? You know, this is manners, this is, you know... I don't know why this even subject was even brought up or why she was even on the radio, because it's a nondescript. It's an absolute, there's far better things to discuss than someone being polite and helpful.
And he was being helpful, and she does accept that it would have been far better to take the seat. Marilyn, thank you. We are going to discuss plenty of other things, don't you worry. We're talking about the heatwave and the appalling decision by so many schools to close, including one we've just learned that had a whip round for the parents to have air conditioning. What is the point of doing that? As I said before, we need to breed resilience. We need to inculcate within children an idea that we are going to get you in and out safely from school. Shane's in Edinburgh. Shane, you're taking us back in time. Good morning.
I am, but poor Rachel, that's all I can say. If it makes us...
Never say poor Rachel. Never.
I happen to
sympathy for that woman, ever.
Like your lady that's just contributed, I happen to like Rachel Johnson.
Well, there has to be somebody who does.
I think she's a very decent person. However, no, I do. However, I don't like her brother, but I like her. However...
Joe's a lovely guy. Really nice guy.
Oh, Joe is the other one. But if it helps Rachel, a young man did exactly the same thing to me in Edinburgh a few years ago. He was about 16-year-old schoolboy, and he said, "Excuse me, sir, would you like a seat?" And I thought it was very nice of him. I'm a little bit older than Rachel. I'm 66 now, so...
Right.
Anyway, going back to...
I live in fear of being offered a seat. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll have to take it, but I don't want to... If you ever see me on a tube, which is highly unlikely, don't offer me a seat. In fact, make me stand up. In fact, jab me until I stand up is what I would say.
Well, I think it's rather nice.
All right.
But anyway, changing the subject to this heat wave, you and I are old enough to remember the 1976 heat wave.
Remember it well. I was a teenage boy, yep.
So was I. I was in the fourth year of secondary school. The kitchen manageress of our school, and it was a state school,
right,
wasn't always very nice. she decreed in the middle of that heat wave that
50 years ago today, by the way.
Was it really?
50 years ago today, that you and I were sweating like there's no tomorrow.
It was absolutely oppressive and dreadful, wasn't it?
Terrible.
She decreed that they used to put water jugs on the table in the dining room so you could have a glass of water with your meal, or a beaker as it was. There were a lot of spillages of water, and there always were. I don't know. She then decreed that there would be no water jugs on the table during the rest of that academic term. So
why?
Because this school was because there were too many spillages, and her ladies had to clean it up at the end of the dining session. And I wondered if she'd reinstate them in September. She did, but this is and I can remember she served curry on one of those days, and a friend of mine was begging her for water, and she wouldn't. And the school was terribly oppressive anyway. This was just enforced. We were all told there would be no water at lunchtime. We had no means of getting a drink. God knows what was happening to our kidneys during that period.
Terrible.
And how oppressive it was. And I do think when you look at today, with all the protections that we have and the attitude that we have to children, how things have improved so much, that this is probably a little bit too far. Whereas back in the 70s, it's not proportionate. It's a disproportionate reaction to exceptional weather conditions. But back in the 70s, no one would dream of complaining what went on in the school that I went to over that arbitrary decision, which really, instead of asking the kids, can you please be more careful when you sit at the table and pour water, that would have been the only thing that would have been necessary.
Lastly, if you see the changes that have gone in the decades since you and I were at school...
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't think we'll be here in another 50 years. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you and I are still chatting on the radio. But you just wonder what that generation will be like, because they will not be... everybody in their lives, there has to be a degree of risk. There has to be in any life. When I leave the studio today and I walk by the road, there is a risk that a car's going to drive. What am I going to do? Never walk by a road?
We have become totally risk-averse, and it's ridiculous. The levels, there are sensible things when sensible risk assessments are being done, but I think this one has gone a stage too far.
Totally agree with you. Thanks, Shane. And if we're talking about things that have gone too far, it's time to stop this odious campaigner.
I was told time and time again that my party was finished, that we were consigned to history, that a majority at the general election, let alone a landslide majority, was impossible. But we proved those people wrong, because we changed our party, ripping out the poison of anti-Semitism, restoring trust on the economy, defence and national security.
Just rude, the odious campaigner being Steve Bray, not the Prime Minister. Can't somebody just rip out his Duracells? Would it be that difficult? Well, the campaigner, Steve Bray, spoke with LBC's Henry Riley last night.
Some like me, some hate me. Now, I'm not in a position to know the volume down in Downing Street as I'm playing it, because on some days it's better than others. I didn't have the amps on full volume, but when I arrived at the gates, there was a protester there from the Restore Party, and he had a megaphone. And, of course, he was just shouting derogatory things about having Keir Starmer arrested, him being a traitor, and that kind of thing. So I had to weigh it up. I was going to play Ode to Joy at the end because it was Keir Starmer's favourite all-time tune.
Disingenuous cobblers. You can see the door of number 10 from where that man was standing, because I've done it more times than I can remember, and it's totally wrong. Time to ban those kind of protests. I'll take your views on that. It's 8:46, LBC News Headlines. Dominic Ellis.
LBC understands two senior Labour figures are considering running against Andy Burnham for the Labour leadership. The UK's record for the highest temperature in June could be broken later. And the ticket resale company StubHub has been ordered to refund more than 50,000 customers over hidden fees. LBC weather, sunny and hot in the south, with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east. Cloudy in the north, but mostly dry. A high of 37 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. On the roads, there are lengthy delays on the M1 southbound. It's slow for about half an hour from Junction 8 at Hemel Hempstead to Junction 5 at Watford. Those emergency works are still taking place. On the M25, anti-clockwise, it's slow at Junction 3 at the M20 following an accident. And in East London, the A12 remains closed northbound at Chadwell Heath because of flooding. Also because of flooding, there are problems in Twickenham. Heath Road is closed westbound. And also in Childs Hill on the A41, only one lane is open northbound. That's also because of the flooding. On the trains, no Elizabeth Line services between the Heathrow terminals because of flooding, and also Great Western Railway services are severely disrupted between Paddington and Reading.
LBC. Been thinking about upgrading your tech this summer? Maybe you need a sign. Well, the sun is shining, your annual leave got approved, and now you can get a little something extra. Buy any selected Galaxy devices and claim up to £300 cashback. Conveniently available in your Samsung wallet. Look, it might not be subtle, but it's definitely a sign. Save more this summer with Samsung. Buy before the 23rd of June 2026 from a participating retailer.
Fund more troops, 6,000 regulars, 14,000 reserves. We would take the wasted money on Ed Miliband's net zero projects, put that into a sovereign defence fund so that we can accelerate the R&D in the defence industry, because the way war is being carried out now is very different from how it used to be. We have to take some serious decisions because the peaceful era is over. We spent the peace dividend, but that does mean taking tough decisions. And what worries me is that people like Andy Burnham and others think that government is a popularity contest. It's about how much you can give away, how many freebies you can give away, rather than looking after the safety and security of the nation.
In his farewell speech, I wonder if you recognise this picture of the United Kingdom, and I now start quoting, an economy that is stronger, growing faster than our peers, wages rising faster than inflation in every single month since we came to power, investment secured, infrastructure being built, an end to austerity. Is that the UK you recognise?
I don't know what he was talking about. I do not recognise that at all. Unemployment has risen every single month since Labour came into office because they killed jobs with that first disastrous budget. And wasn't it a disgrace that Rachel Reeves, who's 50% of the reason why Labour has been terrible, wasn't there? Instead, she was taking selfies with Andy Burnham. I mean, this is what they're like. They won't do the right thing and they won't take responsibility, and instead they pretend that they have achievements. I felt very sorry for Keir Starmer, to be honest.
On that
he hasn't
point,
achieved much.
I do feel he was not allowed the dignity and respect that the position of being Prime Minister of this country was, with that campaigner playing Ode to Joy at, I believe, full blast down the end of the road. Your reaction on that, Mrs. I know you're political foes, and I get all of that, but that's not the way to see a man go, is it?
No, it was a disgrace. Keir Starmer should have been allowed a much more dignified exit. I heard that clip of him on your show, the Steve Bray. To be honest, I thought he sounded drunk. This is not something that we should allow outside Downing Street. But do you know the reason why...
How do you allow for protest then?
So the reason why he is allowed, he's been prosecuted before, is because of the Convention on Human Rights. The ECHR rears its head yet again. This is why we have said we would leave. We're not going to allow that piece of legislation to stop us from governing our country. We look like a clown country when people like Steve Bray are doing that to a prime minister. Like, we've got no control over anything that happens here. It's something that should be stopped. He's been out there for 10 years making Parliament and Downing Street look like a clown show, and he needs to be stopped.
Well, it
That's
certainly
my
wouldn't
firm
happen
view.
outside the Elysee Palace or the White House, wouldn't it? You wouldn't
No,
see anything
definitely
like
not.
No. So there would be an exclusion zone as well, would there? Do you think?
So I think that people are taking protest well beyond the meaning of what protest is. This is nuisance. It is not protest, and there's a clear difference. Protest used to be about people asking for rights, universal suffrage, property rights. Now it's just nuisance making. It's not fair on people who want to enjoy the city, and it definitely gave our country a very bad look when the Prime Minister deserved a dignified exit on his resignation.
I've no idea whether you're a football fan, Mrs. Badenoch, but we look as though we will be having effectively our 7th manager or head coach in 10 years. No football team has ever performed well like that. In fact, normally they get relegated. What needs to be the solution? Surely not another general election and have another leader in, Mrs. Badenoch?
So well, as a leader of the opposition, I always want a general election. I think there should be a Conservative government. Well, that's an argument for never having elections again. But more seriously, the reason why we have this problem is because everyone prepares for elections instead of having a plan to govern. Here are the tough things we're going to do. Here are the difficult decisions we're going to make. Instead, it's promises and freebies. We have so many elections now. Holyrood elections, Senate elections. We've got a new Manchester mayoral election, by-elections, local government elections. But no one is actually running anything. So I want us to start running things. That's why I put out my plan, the Alternative King's Speech, lots of bills, get Britain working again, get people who can work off welfare, drill in the North Sea, fund our defence. Here's how. There'll be some tough decisions. And unlike other party leaders, I'm not going to lie to you. It's common sense. We will do this and we will get Britain working again.
Last question, if you need to get some water. I hope we provide you with some water at our Westminster studios. Last question. We're speaking on 10 years since the Brexit vote. How do you look back on what that has done to the United Kingdom and the delivery or otherwise of the Brexit deal?
There's still too many missed opportunities. Brexit, like other elections, was another one where people thought about how do we win the campaign, not how do we actually use Brexit. I wasn't an MP 10 years ago. I was a regular citizen. I voted.
You were a normal person,
yes,
Kemi.
Yes, I was a normal person before I became a politician.
Yeah.
And getting into Parliament, I was amazed that there were no plans. They'd only just started working it out. We need to make the best of this. We need to use the powers which we have taken. We're not using them right now. We've been too afraid to use them. The last Conservative government, COVID came in just after we left the EU, and that stymied quite a lot of things. But there are many missed opportunities we should be taking up.
Enjoyed our time this morning. Thanks very much. Kemi Badenoch, leader of the Conservative Party, talking about what should be happening now, and also getting into the subject concerning that campaigner who I think has really had his last stand, hasn't he? John's in Brighton. John, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is really getting annoying, and others are also protesting down Downing Street. They have these monster speakers, like concert speakers, and what you need to do, people need to get in there, pull the cables out or cut the cables. And
I think they're probably going to be battery powered, actually. Do you want a position where a police officer goes up to someone with one of these enormous music systems and opens the back and pulls out the Duracell batteries?
No, not the police. People around him. You just while they're looking forward to where they're,
no, you can't do that.
Go behind. Yeah, no, why not? It's just he's not going to argue.
Respectfully, if someone tried to take the batteries out of anything that I own, careful what I say here.
Not batteries. Pull the cables out.
There aren't cables, man.
No. I think with these are monster speakers. I think that you'll be able to find a cable.
No, we're going around in circles. He did not have a cable at the gates of number 10. What did he plug it into? It will be big batteries. I don't know, 15 double Ds or whatever they're called. Who's talked about Katie Price? And you've got to pull those batteries out. That is the reality. John, thank you. I'm finishing now. One call. We're going to go a minute late to the news. Tanya's in East Horsley to talk about Rachel Johnson. What's your view of Ms. Johnson not taking the seat when kindly offered by a shy young man who's just put down his Bible to offer the seat?
Well, of course, she should have done, but I was going to tell you that a young woman offered my husband a seat, and he refused. And I said to him, "You've got to take it." So I'd been offered a seat, and I leaned forward to this lady, and I said, "Look, we're really kind. Please offer it to him again. He will." He was just a bit embarrassed about it, which he did sit down. But can I just tell you how the government stopped the heat wave in '76? I was 29 then.
Right.
What they did was that they appointed a minister of drought.
Dennis Howe. Was it Dennis Howe?
I can't remember, but I know it was August, and my husband and I were on the way. I don't remember, but it was a long time. And my husband and I were driving down to the coast. It was a weekend. I think it was August bank holiday, and the heavens opened.
Oh wow!
It was literally days after he.
Well, didn't you get wet this morning? The early hours of this morning. Was there no rain in East Horsham?
No.
Are you serious?
No. Serious. I think my husband said there was a spatter of rain, and it missed us.
Oh my God! It was like a monsoon in my part of London, in southeast London. Extraordinary. And I know from colleagues in other parts of London it was equally noisy. You must have just been on the edges of that. Tanya, the music means we must move on. Coming up after news, we move on. But going back to that speech,
investment secured, infrastructure being built, an end to austerity, with the fastest fall in NHS waiting lists for 17 years.
Is that the UK you recognise plus? As we get ready for a few What a Scorcher, how to stay cool in the heat for both you and your pets. Those stories and more after the news on LBC.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, it's understood 2 senior Labour MPs are considering running against Andy Burnham for the Labour leadership. Backbenchers are reportedly not happy with the idea that Mr Burnham could become Prime Minister without a formal contest. Darren Jones and Al Carnes are understood to be considering a challenge when nominations open next month. The Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has just told Nick the fact the UK is facing a 7th Prime Minister in 10 years is hugely damaging to the UK.
The reason why we have this problem is because everyone prepares for elections instead of having a plan to govern. Instead, it's promises and freebies. We have so many elections now, but no one is actually running anything. So I want us to start running things. That's why I put out my plan, the Alternative King's Speech, lots of bills, get Britain working again, get people who can work off welfare, drill in the North Sea, fund our defence.
Andy Burnham is expected to set out his plans for the economy in a speech next week. The UK's record for the highest temperature in June, 35.6 degrees Celsius, could be broken later. Some schools are already shut or closing early ahead of Wednesday's red extreme heat alert for parts of England and Wales. The warning, meaning a danger to life, will come into force from 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. The former Deputy Prime Minister, Sir Nick Clegg, has told LBC that he believes the UK will eventually rejoin a restructured European partnership. Today marks the 10th anniversary of the EU referendum, which saw the UK vote for Brexit. The decision became a political turning point, with ripple effects felt across every area, including the economy, judiciary and defence. Sir Nick Clegg has told Nick Ferrari at breakfast the UK's European future could be closely linked to Ukrainian membership of the bloc.
I find it almost unimaginable to think that Ukraine could end up at the sort of top table of Europe and that we in the UK are not sitting alongside them in some shape or form. So I think, it's been 10 years since the Brexit referendum. I think maybe by 2036, in another 10 years, we'll be either sitting alongside Ukraine in a reformed European Union or well on the way to doing so.
The ticket resale company StubHub has been ordered to refund more than 50,000 customers over hidden fees. £590,000 is to be given back, amounting to an average of £10 per transaction. The competition watchdog has also fined the resale site close to £1 million for failing to be upfront about mandatory charges. And England can book their spot in the knockout stages of the World Cup tonight with a win against Ghana. Thomas Tuchel's side started the tournament with an impressive 4-2 win against Croatia. In the city a short time ago, the FTSE 100 were trading down 76 at 10,362. The pound buys $1.32 and €1.15. LBC weather, sunny and hot in the south with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east. Cloudy in the north but mostly dry. A high today of 37 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Dominic Ellis.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is £42 million. It'll have you dancing like nobody's watching. Yeah, baby. Just make sure nobody is watching. Get in tonight's draw. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. It could be you. Estimated jackpot. Rules apply. 18+.
This is LBC from Global. Leading
today, what probably many of you probably guess, but you don't know unless you watch it. Today, what probably many of you probably guess, but you don't know unless you watch it in the studios. I'm busy making copious notes because I'm trying to keep up. I'm not going to lie, my shorthand has certainly gone down from 120 words a minute on T-line. I was really struggling at times yesterday, but I did keep up, certainly for the passage that, apart from saying that the Labour Party was morally bankrupt, that rather jumped out at me, but after saying that, Sir Keir then painted this picture, and I'm going to ask you before you hear it, is this the United Kingdom you recognise? This picture of what he and his colleagues have achieved over the last all but 2 years.
Look at what we've achieved in just 2 years. An economy that is stronger, growing faster than our peers. Wages rising faster than inflation in every single month since we came to power. Investment secured, infrastructure being built, an end to austerity, with the fastest fall in NHS waiting lists for 17 years, the biggest improvement in rights for workers and renters in a generation, the biggest uplift in defence spending since the Cold War, small boat crossings falling, asylum hotels closing, protecting young people from social media, and 500,000 children being lifted out of poverty because of the choices that I made. Our reputation in the world restored, with Britain once again standing up for decency, respect and the rule of law, securing trade deals, standing with Ukraine, standing up for our values and rebuilding our relationship with our allies in Europe. Change promised by a Labour government. Change fought for by a Labour government. Change delivered by a Labour government.
How unfortunate that oaf was playing that music at that time, but we've discussed that in the previous hour. So let's look at three key areas. The first being an end to austerity, to quote the Prime Minister, an end to austerity. Dr. Hannah Brinsden is Head of Policy and Advocacy at the Food Foundation. Have we ended austerity in your view? Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Have we ended austerity?
Have we ended austerity? I think the government has implemented some really important policies. So the two-child benefit, the cap and free school meals, these are really, really important for reducing food insecurity and lifting people out of poverty. The problem is that poverty is so systemic at the moment that a lot more needs to be done. And I think that we're seeing sort of food insecurity rising. There's been projections that child poverty is actually going to increase. So I think what we need to be doing... Is that the Joseph Rowntree
Foundation research? Yeah, go
exactly.
on. Yeah, just so we're on the same page. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So I think what we've seen is good steps in the right direction, like free school meals in particular is something that we're very passionate about at the Food Foundation. It ensures that all children living in poverty who are able to access good, nutritious food. But we know that a lot more needs to be done. And I think one of our concerns is that there's been a lot of projections that food prices are actually going to increase over the coming months as a result of sort of rising energy costs and things like that. And that's going to put more pressure on families in the coming months, in the coming years. We recently published new research that found that for the lowest income households, they would have to spend 85% of their disposable income just to afford a healthy diet. So there's clearly big gaps in what's being done, and we need to do a lot more to be ensuring that everybody can access health food.
One pretty straightforward measure is the use of food banks, and I understand that is growing in number across most of the country.
So I think food banks are a really important sort of crisis support for people who simply can't afford to get access to food. But it can't be the solution. We need to be looking at, well, why do we increasingly need food banks? What is driving that? And really making sure that people are actually able to access and afford healthy food through a variety of means. One policy that the government did sort of make a small commitment to was a scheme called Healthy Start, which is a sort of payment for low-income households with very young children to be able to basically buy fruit, vegetables, milk. They increased the value ever so slightly to £4.65 a week. Right. But research that we published last week found that if it had stayed pace with inflation, it would be at least £5.88. So a huge discrepancy there in terms of what people are getting. So
a final sort of rounding up, a start to an end of austerity, but not an end of austerity.
I think that's fair.
Okay. Dr. Hannah Brinston, thank you, Head of Policy and Advocacy at the Food Foundation. I will finish it there because there are two other areas I want to look at and I must afford time to them. So, Donna, thank you very much. Let's talk about the economy. And again, I go back to quotes. An economy that is stronger, growing faster than our peers. Professor Jagjit Chadha is Professor of Economics at the Faculty of Economics at the University of Cambridge and joins me now. Professor, thank you for your time. Again, fact-check that for me, if you would, sir. True, false, or a little bit in between? Good morning.
Good morning. Look, the economy is nowhere near blowing as hot as the weather at the moment. It's not an economy that's done very well for a generation. And I think we need to be very careful in drawing any analyses from the last few months. Data is heavily revised. I'm sorry, this might be a rather dull kind of point.
No.
And it's also very noisy. And you can't really draw comparisons over a month or a quarter with our trading partners, whether in the G7 or elsewhere. I think the basic point is we need to remember for the last 10 years, growth in income per head, and I think Hannah previously was in an important way focusing on this. How are people actually doing? Is when we take the level of output we've got and divide it by the number of people, has been very paltry. In fact, I've described it in previous work as a slow puncture. Economy's kind of 0.5% a year increase in income per head over 10 years. When we look at the average after World War II, it was more like 2% a year.
Really?
And that was the thing that was driving people's views, that the world was getting better, they had opportunities and chances. You're now living in this stagnant economy, and nothing, I'm afraid, that's happened in the last 2 years changes that view particularly. It's still a stagnant economy. And it's because it's stagnant, we have these problems at the lower end of the income distribution that Hannah was talking about. It's actually the stagnant economy driving it, rather than government intervention in terms of providing more subsidies for poorer people. We've got to ask ourselves, why is it we're delivering an economy with low wages and low levels of economic growth? And I'm afraid we haven't come up with solutions in the last 2 years at all.
When the Prime Minister references, quotes our peers, we decided to have a look at a couple of others. The United States, which is very much separate, they're growing at 2.2%, but Poland is growing by 3.3%. Now, I would have thought that's a more relative comparison. What do the Poles know that we don't?
Well, there's a long period of catch-up there, but as well, they've had incubating high levels of human capital and a view as to where the country wants to go. I think we've been a little bit lost as a country, and it's a very easy statement to make, but we do want from our leaders a vision and a direction. And I'm afraid I wouldn't necessarily blame this particular government for that. We've been in this kind of mess or turmoil for a decade or more without a clear vision as to where we want to drive the country. And that, the answers are pretty well known and clear. It's to think about how we improve productivity, but that requires infrastructure expenditure, making it an attractive environment for business investment, and encouraging foreign direct investment from abroad.
Leave it there. Thanks, Professor Jagjit Chadha, Professor of Economics at the Faculty of Economics with the University of Cambridge. So that's at best a no-score draw or possibly a defeat as well. What of the NHS? And I quote again, the fastest fall in NHS waiting lists for 17 years. Now, he won't have said that unless the numbers bear it up, but is that the feeling within the NHS that it's now starting to turn the super-tanker around? Siva Anandasiva is Director of Policy, Events and Partnership at the widely respected King's Fund, which looks at health matters, and joins me now. Thanks for coming on. Is that, again, the NHS you recognised when you heard that yesterday or read it this morning? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Well, the NHS I recognise is the NHS you just described. I think the Prime Minister is right. When you look at the numbers, Waiting lists for things like a knee or a hip operation are coming down. And the figures he quoted, the biggest fall in a single month in 17 years, the biggest year-on-year fall in 16 years. Absolutely right, sure. But the feel, is that what it feels like? No. The people we speak to, the leaders in the NHS, the patients who rely on the NHS, they don't recognise that. They may feel that things aren't necessarily getting worse, but everyone has a story of either waiting too long for the care they need, having to decide whether to go private, or poor communication over when they'll be seen. So I think the NHS is in a far less rosy place than those stats would suggest.
Why can't we tie these two narratives up? What is the distance between them? Why isn't it joining up, do you imagine?
Yeah, great question. So the reason it isn't joining up is because what the Prime Minister is talking about is improvement. And he's right, waiting lists are starting to fall. The problem is, waiting lists about a year ago were 7.4 million. Now they're about 7.1 million, 7.2 million. So they're falling, but my goodness, we're starting from a really bad position and it's only gotten slightly better. All those comparisons to 17 years ago, 16 years ago, back then there were about 2.5 million people on waiting lists. And we were getting people off the waiting list a lot quicker than we are now. So are things improving? Could they have been worse? Sure. But are they in a good state? No. The NHS is a far, far way away from that.
Lastly, we have to talk about the situation in A and E, and it wasn't that long ago that hospital trusts were actually advertising for jobs for corridor nursing positions. Where are we in that field?
We're still in the same place. So we are in the place where some hospitals in this country are putting call bells into corridors because we're almost turning them into wards. So yes, waiting lists are starting to come down. A&E, I was talking to someone yesterday who said, my A&E department feels more like a war zone. Right. So yes, there is variation there. Some parts of the NHS that are doing well. But again, if you want to go back to 16 years, these targets for how long we wait in an A&E department for a knee operation were reliably met, and now they're almost reliably missed. That's the state of the NHS at the moment.
Thank you for your time this morning. Siva Anandasiva is Director of Policy, Events and Partnership at the widely respected King's Fund, which interests in all health matters. So that's the United Kingdom. 3 of our experts have seen. What could you give him? Maybe 50% on a couple, but certainly not austerity. But it's your views. We'll follow this. And yeah, we're in for another scorcher through the day and tonight, mid to high 30s in parts of the country, maybe hitting 40. How to stay cool in the heatwave. Not just you, but your beloved pets too. We'll be looking at that. The 9:15 LBC News headlines are read by Dominic Ellis.
LBC understands 2 senior Labour figures are considering running against Andy Burnham for the Labour leadership. The UK's record for the highest temperature in June could be broken later. And the ticket resale company StubHub has been ordered to refund more than 50,000 customers over hidden fees. LBC weather sunny and hot in the south, with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east. Cloudy in the north, but mostly dry. A high of 37 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Lots of problems on the motorways this morning. Firstly, the M25 on the Kent stretch. Very busy at Junction 3 at the M20 following an accident. 2 lanes are closed and there are delays back to Junction 4 at Alpington. Then on the Surrey stretch of the M25, there are delays clockwise to Junction 11 at Chertsey after a cart was on fire. Still slow for about half an hour on the M1 southbound, all the way from Junction 8 at Hemel Hempstead to Junction 5 at Watford. On the trains, well, these problems for the Elizabeth line do continue. There's no service between the Heathrow terminals. Southeastern aren't running between Ebbsfleet International and Gravesend. And on the Underground, there's no service for the Circle line, and the Hammersmith and City line is part suspended.
Hear every side of the story. LBC.
Need anything from Tesco? Like 3 for £8 on selected Tesco finest picnic food, such as burrata with semi-dried tomatoes or whipped feta and tabbouleh.
Club card accepted.
Because every little helps. Majority of larger stores ends 11th of October. Club card or app required.
Call Nick Ferrari now. 0345 6060 973.
better protection for private tenants, you know. I mean, that was
this
a
is a
real
policy
issue,
that came in, the Renters' Rights Act that came in relatively recently, earlier this year. I mean, the other side to that is, of course, and I don't rent my property and I don't rent out, so I'm neither a landlord nor a tenant. But I understand, though, is that a lot of landlords have, in fact, decided to kick the tenants out and sell the property because it's just not worth sticking with rentals.
Yeah, but then, you know, up here, a lot of landlords haven't, you know, and I don't know many... I must admit, I don't know many. I know a few landlords. They don't.
No, so it brings here. I mean, as in most things, when it comes to areas such as this, I'm guided by my calls, and I was struck by the high number of people. Now, do they actually go ahead? I don't know, but they ring and they say, "Look, I've got 3 properties. I'm going to sell a couple of them because it's not worth it," is what they're saying, Les.
Yeah, but the ones I know, and the ones I know of, they don't seem to have taken a hit.
Has your life improved? Got worse or stayed exactly the same in 2 years of Keir Starmer?
It's about the same.
It's about the same. All right, we'll take more calls on that in just a moment. Now, for many of us, our lives are going to get distinctly sticky later today, as the temperature you've already heard on LBC News Bulletins probably moves to the mid to high 30s in parts of London. And it's going to get hotter again tomorrow and I believe on Thursday until it sort of semi-breaks on Friday. Fortunately, to date, we're faring considerably better than France. 18 people have died in France in the latest heatwave, including 2 children left in a hot car. The country suffering from record heat, fueling a political row, which in one instance has meant that they've cancelled alcohol, any drinking at certain music festivals. But what can you do to look after yourself? And what can you do to look after your pets? Because we are into, what a scorcher territory. Dr. Raj Arora is an NHS GP, regular commentator on health matters. You see her on television shows and you hear her, I'm delighted to say, regularly here. I'm not asking you to do the cat and the dog. Don't worry, Doctor. You're going to help us with human consumption. What should they be doing? Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Yes, there's lots we can do. Look, the heat's really enjoyable, but like you said, we have to be careful because things can go wrong if we don't look after ourselves. So it's really important to do the basics first. You want to make sure you're hydrating regularly. Don't wait until you're thirsty. Just keep sipping water throughout the day. Remember that alcohol, like you mentioned, and excessive caffeine can make dehydration worse, so be very mindful of that. If you are heading outside, you want to make sure you're avoiding that strenuous exercise during the hottest parts of the day, usually between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. You want to make sure you're wearing appropriate clothing, loose-fitted, light-coloured, a hat, sunglasses. Obviously, don't forget your sunscreen as well. And then if you're indoors, keep those curtains and blinds closed during the hottest parts of the day and to stop the rooms heating up. Once the temperature drops in the evening, you can open those windows to let the cooler air circulate. So those are important points to make. Now, fans. We all talk about fans. Fans don't actually cool the air. They cool you by helping the sweat to evaporate off your body. And they're great when the temperature is sort of below 35 degrees. But when it's extremely hot, they can simply circulate that hot air and they don't do very much. So, you know, placing a bowl of ice or a frozen water bottle in front of the fan can help create that cooling effect. That's like a little fan hack that I always kind of give to patients. And if you're sleeping in the heat, try to use light cotton bedding. Keep the bedroom dark during the day and consider a cool shower before bed as well. You mentioned cars. This is really important, Nick. So for parents, be especially careful with babies and young children. And when they're in sort of prams and, pushing them around in the heat, never place a blanket or a muslin over the pram to block the sun because it can dramatically increase temperature inside, reduce that airflow, creating quite a dangerous mini greenhouse effect. So instead, use the pram's built-in shade, a parasol, keep checking your baby isn't getting too hot. Never leave a child, a vulnerable adult or a pet in a parked car. It's surprising how even a few minutes, that temperature can rise incredibly quickly and it can become life-threatening, okay? So really important to recognise that. Look after those that are vulnerable, so checking on, your elderly neighbours, make sure you're looking after pets, but also keep the warning signs of heat exhaustion in the front of your minds. These are things like a headache, dizziness, nausea, excessive sweating, muscle cramps, feeling faint. If you notice these symptoms, get into the shade, cool down, drink fluids, and get help if symptoms aren't improving.
Doctor, why? I understand headaches, I understand dizziness. Why would your muscles cramp up more in hot weather?
because your body, as the temperatures rise, your enzymes, your bodies, the way that your body normally works, everything starts to change up. Your muscles obviously will produce something called lactic acid, and you will start to get more cramps from it, because when you're dehydrated, you produce more of this.
So you sweat it out effectively. The good stuff you're sweating out effectively. I see.
Yeah, and also remember the electrolyte imbalance. As you're sweating, you're losing those electrolytes, and your muscles need those electrolytes to work well. So the first signs of heat exhaustion will be that muscle cramping kind of feeling, but then you can get into the territory of heat stroke, which is obviously when you need to be getting straight to hospital, calling 999. That's when you get a very high temperature, hot skin without the sweating. You might have fast breathing. You might have confusion and restlessness, and you might then start to get seizures and fits as well, and loss of consciousness. So really important to notice those early signs, Nick.
Lastly,
yes,
we understand that it's a good idea, it seems counterintuitive, to drink hot liquids in hot weather, i.e. a cup of tea is quite good for you, or possibly coffee. Is that true? Is there any medical backing to that, or is it all somewhere in the mind?
I think that one is somewhere in the mind, because we do say it can cool you down, but it's only if the moisture from your sort of sweat. It's a really difficult one, because the heat triggers receptors in your mouth that boost the sweat production, and then as that sweat evaporates, it pulls heat away from your skin. But remember that for most people, that's not going to give them a cooling effect. So research does kind of indicate that temperature of the drink doesn't itself significantly alter your core temperature. So I would say what you want to do is, if a hot drink makes you feel cooler, which I think in some cases it might, fine. But in most cases, what you want to be doing is having cooler drinks to cool yourself down, not hot drinks.
Always good speaking with you. Stay cool yourself. Thank you, Raj. Dr. Raj Arora, NHSGP, regular commentator on health matters for human beings. Now to our animal friends. Dominic Dyer, animal welfare expert and broadcaster. Dominic, how can you tell if your dog, your cat or your horse is getting overly hot?
Well, we have 13 million dogs, for example, in ownership in the UK, and most of them now are in towns and cities. And as we know, the temperatures are going to be hotter than Bangkok today and the next few days, and humidity to match. So we've just heard the impact on humans, but we have a big impact on pets as well, particularly dogs. So if it does go over 40 degrees, for example, you are going to see potential heat stroke in dogs, and you have to be aware of that. And that could mean that the dog begins to really, excessive panting. You could see red or pink tongue and gums. They can be very lethargic, very weak. They can start vomiting, diarrhea, and they could collapse if they're in real problems. And when a dog gets that hot, you've got to get it out of the heat. You've got to try and cool it down. You've got to try and get more water into it. But if you don't get it to a vet's very quickly, it could die, because you can see organ failure here, internal bleeding. So it's a very dangerous thing, and you've got to keep your dogs, particularly, and your other pets, cool in this heat wave.
Would you ever put a fan on a dog, one of those small fans you can buy in supermarkets and DIY stores?
I think you can position a dog, with a cool mat, with a fan blowing cold air over them. You can do that also with portable air conditioning units, which I do at the moment at home. I think the most important thing is to think, if you're uncomfortable, your dog's going to be uncomfortable as well. And when it comes to walking, get it out. I'm getting my dog at the moment out at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Really?
So we're probably going to see Wimbledon and Clapham Common with lots of people out before the sun comes up, because it's going to be that hot and that humid, Nick, that if you're going out at 7 or 8, it's going to be too hot. And you don't want to get it out until the sun goes down. And when I say down, I mean 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And it could still be very humid there. So just think about that before you take your dogs out. I see people taking dogs out in scorching temperatures to pub gardens.
Yeah.
Don't put them in cars unless you've got to get them to a vet for an emergency. You keep the aircon on. These issues are really dangerous for dogs. Cats less so.
I was going to ask a word on cats before we go. Dominic, a word on cats, if you would.
I think keep your cats in and keep them cool, rather than allow them just to disappear into an area where they might get extremely hot. But they're quite clever cats. They can find cool spaces, so they're probably better able to deal with the heat and actually look after themselves than our dogs. And if you're working in an office, you tend to have someone to come in to walk your dog. Take a few days off. Keep your house cool, and you look after your dog. Don't leave it at home alone in the next few days. I think that could be very dangerous indeed.
Finally, for our rural listeners, if they're fortunate enough to own something such as a horse or a pony, make sure they've got some shade, they've got some trees they can get to, or presumably perfectly a stable or a lean-to.
Absolutely, and water. Constantly access to water is really important as well.
Enjoyed our conversation. Look after the pets. I'm sure you will, Dominic, by the way. Safe walking in the... Gosh, you're getting up even earlier than I am. Dominic Dyer, animal welfare expert and broadcaster. We'll come to your views. Sorry, I want to hear from you. You took to, I think it was Phil, you want to tell me about your mother, and do you recognise the United Kingdom as set out by Sir Keir Starmer? We will come to that. But talking about politics, joining us after the news...
whoever becomes the Prime Minister will not have been voted for by the British public. And if the next Prime Minister is the new MP for Makerfield, Andy Burnham, he didn't even stand at the last election on any manifesto at all.
Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, of course, 10 years on since that Brexit vote. He's with us after the news. Just turned 9:31. Breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari on LBC. News headlines, Dominic Ellis.
LBC understands 2 Labour MPs are considering running against Andy Burnham to stop him becoming party leader without a formal contest. Darren Jones and the former Armed Forces Minister Al Khan's are understood to be considering a challenge. Forecasters say the UK's record for the highest temperature in June, 35.6 degrees Celsius, could be broken later. Some schools are already shut or closing early ahead of Wednesday's red extreme heat alert for parts of England and Wales. And the former chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, has arrived at court in Edinburgh to be sentenced for embezzlement. The 61-year-old pleaded guilty last month to illicitly spending more than £400,000 of party funds. LBC weather, sunny and hot in the south with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east. Cloudy in the north but mostly dry. A high of 37 degrees.
This is LBC.
Vodafone is backing the UK with an £11 billion investment to make the nation's biggest network even better.
Fair play, that's a big commitment.
So you can launch that business.
So I can start selling my model trains in Pwllheli.
Multitask in a haze of glory.
I could stream Wimbledon whilst on a video call.
And start doing more of what you love from anywhere. Opportunity awaits. Switch to Vodafone today on the nation's network.
Nation's network means UK's biggest combined network through merger of Vodafone and 3 based on number of mobile sites versus major providers. See vodafone.co.uk/TNN. Location subject.
Midlands and parts of the valleys of South Wales, areas that Labour had dominated for over 100 years, Reform had a landslide, swept the board. I knew from that moment that the Prime Minister would not survive. That gave Burnham the opportunity to stand in the by-election. We said, vote Reform, get Starmer out. He said, vote Burnham, get Starmer out. And he won a famous victory. So these things are directly related.
But to those who say the fact that you and your colleagues were not able to get your candidate elected shows that we've hit peak reform, as it were, Mr. Farage.
I know.
I'm only reading that. How do you respond?
Yeah, no, we keep hitting peak reform again and again and again and again and again. But you know what? What happened 6 weeks ago on May the 7th in Wales, in Scotland, in the parts of England that I've just talked about already was our best victory to date. And look, Burnham is popular. He's very popular in Greater Manchester, just as, and you'll remember this better than almost anybody, remember when Boris Johnson was the mayor of London, how popular. Yeah. And he would come into your show, and everyone loved him and he was fun and affable. And Andy Burnham enjoys the same reputation. Why? Well, I'll tell you why, because mayors perform a civic responsibility. They cut ribbons, they welcome travelling Hollywood film stars. They are generally seen as good eggs who were standing up for their cities. Politics is different. And so, look, Starmer going, no surprise at all. But, they were being wiped out. He was a disastrous leader. But when it comes to Mr. Burnham, well, fine. Maybe he's done a great job in Manchester. I don't know. But what does he stand for? And what mandate would he have, particularly if there was a coronation and not a contest? And that's why I think that the public have had enough of the game of musical chairs that's been going on for a decade at number 10 and deserve a general election so that he, if he becomes the Prime Minister, can lay out to the country his vision.
But isn't the reality that you and your colleagues at Reform UK, you don't want Mr. Burnham becoming Prime Minister because he's more likely to put up a better fight against you and your colleagues than Sir Keir ever could?
Well, there are many things I can want in life. I'd love Keir Starmer to stay, despite my campaign slogan up to May the 7th. You have to deal in life with the cards that you're dealt. He will get off, I'm sure he'll be treated like, the second coming by backbench Labour MPs thinking he may well save their jobs and their seats. But I repeat the question, what does he stand for? What are his policies? It appears to me that he's flipped and flopped all over the place over the years. He wasn't elected on the 2024 Labour Party manifesto. And if we have an election, we'll find out what he really stands for. And you know what? People can then decide. If people like what he offers the country and he wins a majority, well, good for him.
Let's talk not for an election, let's talk for a referendum. The Brexit vote was 10 years ago. The Brexit that you and your colleagues were hoping for, as opposed to the Brexit that we have, what percentage of the deal do you think we got in the ultimate Brexit, Mr Farage?
Well, constitutionally, 100%. We've left and we're not going back. It would be a political impossibility for any party to win a general election saying they're going to take us back in. So constitutionally, it's a big win. In terms of, have there been successes? Yes, of course. Our growth figures are higher than France and Germany and Italy. We could roll out a vaccine quickly without being held back by Brussels, whether you like the vaccine or not. We've taken a lead on foreign policy, areas like Ukraine we couldn't have done.
We've taken a 6% hit on GDP, though, Mr Farage.
Well, if you believe that, we would have done almost as well as America. It is for the birds. That stuff is for the birds. These are the same people, by the way, who told us that if we voted Brexit, we'd all end up living in caves, frankly. So I don't buy any of that.
But we're not living in caves, but we are standing in queues when we try and get into Europe.
Yeah, well, look, and provided, once you've given the fingerprints, provided that happens, look, just go by dinghy. It makes much, much easier. And nobody would ask any questions. Look, are there inconveniences to trade with Europe that weren't there before? Yes, but is it now easier to trade with the world? You bet your life it is. Trade deals with the Pacific bloc, with India, etc. So look, it was the right thing to do. But your question, was it implemented? You know what? The Boris wave should never, ever be forgiven. And on business, of the nearly 6 million men and women that run their own businesses, act as sole traders, they overwhelmingly voted Brexit, yeah?
Right.
Whether they're computer programmers or fishermen, they voted Brexit. And there was an opportunity to ease the burden of rules. Interestingly, Kemi Badnoch was the minister responsible who decided not to do it. So on those two areas, a lot of people are disappointed. But what it's done, it's shone a light on how blooming awful our own politicians are, which is why you're seeing these seismic changes. So delivery has been extremely disappointing.
All right. You talk about people going by dinghy because nobody would be asking any questions. I've got to ask you a question about this £5 million gift from this crypto billionaire. You know better than most politicians how LBC works. I'm getting comments as you and I are speaking. This man needs to tell us what has he done with the £5 million. Get him to be truthful. Nigel Farage, please, what has happened to this £5 million gift?
With all due respect, what's it got to do with you?
Well, because it speaks to the position of you hold in office. Initially, we were told that it was because of your personal security and it would pay for that for the rest of your life. Then apparently It was some kind of reward for campaigning for Brexit. I am told we have two different stories. Which is the truth?
Well, I think you're contradicting yourself there, aren't you?
Well, if you tell me what happened with the £5 million, then we're solved.
It's an unconditional gift. I can spend it on Ferraris if I want. That'd be entirely up to me.
Why did you say it was for personal security then?
Because it was given as an unconditional gift, right? The understanding is, and you know very well, I've been physically more attacked over many years than any other politician.
I've been with you when you've been abused. I've seen that. But my listeners want to know, Mr. Farage, how much has been spent?
Nick, I can do with it as I want. I can do what I want with it. Well, I can put it on the horses.
Yes, you are under review, though, by the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner.
Well, and maybe we shouldn't be discussing it in that case. But what I will say to you is, I know that I will need protection until I die.
Right.
I've no idea how long that will be. None of us do. But I know that it's damned expensive, and I now don't have to worry or even think about that because repeatedly over the years, when I've asked for help from the state, I've been refused.
So it was a reward for personal security?
Sorry, Nick, you're confusing two things. One is the money comes in, the other is where it goes, right? I can do with it as I wish, but I know myself what it's for.
How much has been spent?
I bought a cup of coffee this morning. Was that from that money or from what I earned from GB News? Or these are ridiculous questions.
But do you not... I remind you, you used to sit in this very chair. Listeners are concerned about the probity here.
Well, the probity would be if it was a political donation, right? If it's personal.
No, I know it was in a personal capacity. I want to make plain you were not an MP when funds were received.
Exactly.
Has it, as some newspapers have suggested, been used to purchase property?
No. I mean, and look, they can lie all they like. As I say, if I'm seen buying a round of drinks in a pub, they will say it came from that. It's irrelevant.
So just lastly, it's not bought a property, it's not done renovations on property. It will only ever be spent because of the campaigning you did, which resulted in the vote 10 years ago today. You have concerns over your personal security for the rest of your days.
I do, and as for the property thing, that was completed. That was agreed, and the money was checked well before. But look, Nick, but as I say, this is ridiculous because you can ask me this for the next 10 years. You know, as I say, you bought a round of drinks. Where did that money come from? It isn't like that, is it?
Well, no, but I mean, if you just came out and said, you're saying now that there's nothing to see here as regards purchase of houses, renovations of houses, we can finally put this to bed.
And even if there was, it would be irrelevant.
But you did have two stories.
No, there are not two stories. One is I was given the money unconditionally. I believe it was a reward for giving up a quarter of a century of my life, giving up a huge income in the City of London, putting up with lots of abuse. I believe that was the motive. Whether it was or not, that is that side of the equation. The other side of the equation is what I intend to do with it. I've made that perfectly clear.
Right, OK. Finally, I was speaking with Sir Nick Clegg, someone you'll know well. He sees the day in the not-too-far-distant future when there will be a different style of European Union. This will be driven by Ukraine, that seeks to want to join something such as the European Band of Brothers, maybe even so, a totally reconstituted, not called European Union, which the United Kingdom might seek to join. Your reaction to what Sir Nick told me?
Cobblers. Absolutely no way at all. This was set up in 1957 with the Treaty of Rome with the aim of ever closer political union. That is what the club is. Dear old Nick. I have to say, though, wasn't it epic when you chaired the debate on Europe? He was the Deputy Prime Minister. You know, I was the rough lad from down the pub. And you know, so that sort of takes me back to the fact that Clegg and I have always disagreed on this. I think he's a very nice chap, but he's just wrong.
You were down the pub. We had to force open a hotel window so you could have a cigarette before you went on stage. I remember that vividly, without sounding the alarms.
I'm not sure about that.
Nigel Farage, grateful for your time and thank you for your candour on that other matter. Nigel Farage is leader of Reform UK and Reform UK MP for Clacton. We'll look at more detail of what he's just told us after the 9:45 LBC News headlines. Dominic Ellis.
Overnight storms have caused floods, fires and disruption to rail services in parts of southern England as the UK braces for potential record-breaking temperatures later today. LBC understands two Labour MPs are considering running against Andy Burnham to stop him becoming party leader without a formal contest. And speaking to Nick in the last few minutes, Reform UK's leader Nigel Farage has insisted he's under no obligation to declare a £5 million gift he received before becoming an MP. LBC weather, sunny and hot in the south with the odd thundery shower lingering in the east, cloudy in the north but mostly dry, a high of 37 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Severe delays continue on the M25 anti-clockwise on the Kent stretch at Junction 3 at the M20. 2 of the 4 lanes are closed because of an accident. And then the M1 is slow southbound from the M25 to Junction 5 at Watford at the A41. Those emergency works are still taking place. Lots of roads are closed because of flooding, including the A12 northbound at Chadwell Heath. So many problems on the underground, still no Circle Line running at all. The District, the Hammersmith and City and the Metropolitan lines are all part suspended. The Elizabeth line can't run between the Heathrow terminals, and also on the train, Southeastern are disrupted. They can't run between Ebbsfleet International and Gravesend.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, James O'Brien.
Has he stopped lying yet? Is it safe to come out, or is he telling the truth now and he was lying all the previous times that he explained what that £5 million sweetener was for? Oh boy.
James O'Brien at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers. But did you know we also do electric cars? And what's better with us? You get the whole package. The car, the charger, and the energy. So, if you're looking for some great expert advice on going electric, just search Octopus EV. Octopus EV. Rated excellent on Trustpilot from over 5,000 reviews. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
And booked in advance with your parking space.
We spoke last week.
Yeah,
of
The
course, I've got you now.
The difference between me and him is I actually work in my constituency. He never turns up. And the thing is, I was watching Newsnight last night, and what they were going on about is why do we get this churn of British Prime Ministers?
Yes.
The main thing is people have not seen a rise in living standards in 10 years. And what does that link with?
Well, were we doing gangbusters before Brexit? I don't know that we were. We'd still had that financial crash, and there were a lot of people doing very badly then. I just think there's so many things for this country to fix, not least transport, building houses, filling in the potholes. That's got nothing to do with Brexit.
Yeah, if I could respectfully disagree, Nick, because if the economy is down by 240 billion to 300 billion a year, a third of that will be tax. There's the money to fix your potholes. There's the money. We've managed, Nick, to cut ourselves out of the biggest defence market in the world, 180 billion that we can't get to, that Europe is going to spend on defence. And because we're outside of the club, we can't get involved in it.
All right. I have to say that Nigel Farage, rightly or wrongly, would dispute the figures you just said, but I've got to let you go. You can go because it's 9:51 and news breaking at this time, listening here on LBC. Peter Murrell, the former chief executive of the Scottish National Party, has been jailed for 5 years and 3 months for embezzling more than £400,000 of the party's funds. It is expected he will repay the full amount. Murrell purchased a variety of personal items with illicit finances, ranging from that infamous motorhome to a luxury fountain pen, video games, salt and pepper dispensers between August 2010 and October 2022. He's 61. He's the estranged husband of former SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon, and he pleaded guilty to the offences at the High Court in Edinburgh last month. That would have been a severe mitigating factor, actually, the fact that he's been given 5 years and 3 months. Let's go to LBC Scotland political editor Gina Davidson joining us now. OK, Gina, reaction on the political circuit there, and quite a speedy sentencing. Morning.
Good morning, Nick. Yeah, absolutely. We weren't in there very long at all. In fact, all Peter Murrell's appearances in the Edinburgh High Court have been pretty short. We got the mitigation from his defence, which basically boiled down to that he knows he behaved dishonestly and that he'd gone to considerable lengths to conceal his crime when he was embezzling money from the SNP, and that he recognises the harms he did and accepts full responsibility. They said that he did not seek to diminish his culpability and was remorseful. And they went further than that, Nick, to say that any sentence that was going to be handed down today was only part of the punishment, because his plea of guilty was life-changing. He'd been ostracised by friends. He was a figure of public ridicule, and the future beyond prison is bleak and solitary. Those were the words of his defence. But the judge said that he could find no reason for his calculated crime of dishonesty, as he put it. He said, he'd read a social work report which suggested that possible factors from his background or his working life or his personal circumstances could have driven this. But he said, in truth, it was hard to derive what drove your actions, and he couldn't find any mitigating factors which might have caused him to offend. He did take into account the fact that he wasn't minimising the crime and was going to pay back the £400,000 from his own money. And he said that if this had gone to trial, Nick, the sentence, and he'd been found guilty, the sentence would have been around 7 years. As a result, that he pled guilty. He is imposing a sentence of 5 years, 3 months, slightly backdated because he's been in remand for a month. And Peter Murrell then led from the dock in handcuffs, and he is off to spend the next 5 years, Nick, behind bars, but only, I have to say, if he doesn't get a further reduction in his sentence, because at the moment, as you know, Scotland's prisons bursting at the seams, and if you get a particular sentence, you might get a reduction of around 40%. I think that 5 years maybe pushes him beyond that, and he will spend the vast majority of that sentence behind bars.
But the repercussions will ring out over Scottish politics for years, if not decades to come. Gina Davidson, LBC Scotland political editor, reporting from Edinburgh High Court. How intriguing. I had to say, I thought the defence would put some forward... Sorry, I thought his counsel would put forward some defence in that he was suffering an emotional health aspect or whatever it might have been. But instead it's a hands up, yep, I've done it and I've disgraced myself and I offer no excuse. We'll probably have more reaction on that tomorrow. But we are talking about the two politicians. Sir Keir Starmer's on his way out. Nigel Farage was with us about 20 minutes ago. Andrew's in Deptford. Andrew, what do you take from that? Good morning.
Yeah, hi there. With regards to Starmer... with regards to the economy, yes, he's done a lot, and yes, he's taken a lot. He's pushed up taxes so people can't afford to live.
Well, the Tories have done a good job of that as well, one has to say, Andrew. That's not uniquely down to him.
We're talking about what Starmer
I know. Yeah,
what Starmer
carried on
done.
a trend, yeah.
Yeah. And all these things that he's done for the poor and the rest of it has all come from pushing up taxes. Now, with regards to Farage, I am a Farage supporter, but I don't like the way that he is avoiding the questions on where the £5 million went.
What do you need to hear from him? Because initially he told me it was none of his business, and then I spoke to him, told him it speaks to his very credibility as a senior politician. What do you need to hear from him now?
A straightforward answer, which he normally gives, which is his trait. He is avoiding the question. He is moving the question around, and I don't like that. Any other questions you ask him, he has direct answers for, except that.
All right. Andrew, thank you for your view on the two men. Ian in Waterloo. Ian, your take on either one of the two, whoever you want to go for first. Good morning.
Morning, Nick. Yeah, Andrew's completely right. Obfuscation, changing the subject, answering a different question. Classic Farage. Also, he seems to have developed some sort of chuckle every time he tells a porky, a little bit like when Boris Johnson used to smirk just before he told one. This fella is nothing, like I said to you the other day, Nick, nothing but a fake and a fraud. And the sooner he's exposed for what he is, the better.
Strong words. Ian, thank you. I will finish to get at least one more person in. Thanks, Ian. John in Leicester. What do you want to say, John?
Hi, Nick.
Hello.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised that you didn't raise the issue when Farage raised it himself about the requirement for a general election.
Right.
None of the ex-Tory MPs have become Reform MPs have been party to a by-election, even though Farage in the past has often...
this is people like Robert Jenrick and others taking the Reform ticket. Is that what you're saying? Just to clarify.
Yes, exactly.
Right,
and
OK.
Farage has suggested that in the past when it's not his party. So, I'm wondering why you didn't ask him that question.
I think when you're talking about... OK, it's a fair question. I think when you're talking about someone taking over the running of the country, though, I'm not belittling the good folk of Suella Braverman's constituency or the good folk of Robert Jenrick's constituency. I don't know if it's quite the same as walking into the top job in the land.
Well, I don't agree, Nick, with all due respect, in the basis of the amount of chaos that it would cause. If anything, the change of leadership of a party is less to do with the election.
The changing of a Prime Minister is bigger than the changing of the MP for Portsmouth South or wherever Suella Braverman is. Come on, that's the reality of it, John.
No, I don't agree, Nick. But,
all right.
But, you know,
I respect you for that.
Yes.
I think the point he's driving at, and he's not alone. We've had Sir Ed Davey on the show at the start of the show. We've had Kemi Baden. We've had them all saying there needs to be a change because it is the top of the very much the top job. John, you have the last word of the day. If you missed any of the show, listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. You can stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinions. Download it for free from your app store now. I'm done. James O'Brien's waiting. The other side of the news here on LBC. I'm with you tomorrow morning from 7. Meantime, stay safe.
Thank you, Nick. The time is approaching 10 o'clock, and I'm always a little bit wary of when something sort of moves from the realms of meme to cliche. I think of that lovely woman in Bristol, Brenda was her name, and her response to the news, I can't even remember which election it was, that there's going to be another election. And it doesn't, of course, have to be an election. It can just be a changing of the guard. Remember that if you were born in 1979, you would have reached your 11th birthday, having experienced only one Prime Minister. If you were born in 2016, you're going to reach your 11th birthday having known 7. Something extraordinary has happened to the United Kingdom, and I don't know that we're yet sure exactly what it is.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 10 o'clock, the former chief executive of the SNP, Peter Murrell, has been sentenced to more than 5 years in prison for embezzlement. The 61-year-old pleaded guilty last month to illicitly spending more than £400,000 of party funds between 2010 and 2022. Murrell, who is the estranged husband of Nicola Sturgeon, used the money to buy goods ranging from cars to kitchenware and